Select Board meeting for Monday, February 10, 2024. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We have a relatively full agenda, including a number of budget presentations. And thank you to all the staff who are coming to present. And members of the Capital Improvement Program Committee. And I think Jenny's going to maybe walk us through that later on. Terrific. Okay. So looking to my fellow select board members, are there any items of the agenda for which other members might wish to reorder any items on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on to public hearing. I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, I said it wrong.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Trying to switch.
Change things around.
All right. Let's see. Let's make sure. Yeah, we're okay. We're all good. All right. Thank you, Rob. So I think Arthur should be joining us shortly. This is a tough time for him given work commitments, but he'll be joining us. So this is the public comment period. This is the period of the agenda when the public is welcome to address the select board. We ask that one addresses issues not already scheduled on the agenda. We ask that individuals restrict their comments to 5 minutes. Questions will be directed to me, please. And are there any members of the public who wish to address the select board at this time? Please, if you could please come forward, sit at the table, which is for the benefit of CATV. And if you could please state your name and your address.
My name is Hugh Mellert, and I live at 11 Old Lime Road. I'm a member of the Hanover Bike Walk Committee, and I've been asked to read a public statement to the Select Board from our committee. At our last meeting on February the 3rd, we put together this information letter. Wanted to share this with you. I'm going to be reading this. So, dear Select Board, in its meeting on July 26, 2021, the Select Board greenlit 4 raised intersections around the green upon the strong recommendation of town staff and a Hanover working group. The Hanover Bike Walk Committee applauded these visionary plans that improve safety and accessibility while encouraging mode shift away from driving to more people walking and cycling. Embracing the goals of the Hanover Sustainability Master Plan, Walk Bike Plan, Complete Streets Policy, and the Vision Zero Statement. Providing most of the benefits per federal guidance, raised intersections can reduce crashes with pedestrians by 45%. They also provide critically needed safety and accessibility for those with mobility and visual impairments. Some of the most vulnerable are underserved road users. The Hanover Bike Walk Committee has received input from the disabled community about how essential this infrastructure is, especially in tough winters at night and for wheelchair users. Our particular concern are times when fewer people are crossing, when wheelchair users who are lower to the ground and less visible may not stand out by themselves because of being too low. The Hanover Bike Walk Committee has the opportunity to review current proposal for street design at College Street and East Wheelock Street in front of the Hopkins Center of the Arts, an intersection that is considered part of core campus, linking the Dartmouth Green to the Arts District. The current proposal does not include a raised intersection, and the committee strongly advises that a raised intersection be incorporated back into this design. The Hanover Bike Walk Committee strongly supports other elements of this design, including the shortening of crossing distances and reduction of the multiple threats posed by 2 eastbound travel lanes, as these design elements will improve safety. In this vein, the committee further encourages the development of a network where people can bike and scooter safely without endangering pedestrians and encourages town staff to comprehensively plan this network to be built out alongside other street improvements consistent with our town's complete street policy. The Hanover Bike Walk Committee formally requests that the Select Board ask town staff for a comprehensive evaluation of a raised intersection at College Street and East Wheelock Street. Publicly sharing the pros, cons, costs, and benefits so that proper consideration is given in evaluating the safety, accessibility, and the cost of this previously planned infrastructure, raised infrastructure, College Street and East Wheelock Street, dual benefit of dramatically improving safety day and night, as well as accessibility. Aside from ensuring that the town can avoid a need to reconstruct this intersection in the future at greater expense, this evaluation will help the public understand whether or not staff and the Select Board have changed their views on this matter since 2021 and why such a change, if any, has occurred. We appreciate your due consideration on this matter and we look forward to your response.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We appreciate your input. Any other members of the public who wish to address the Select Board at this time? Yes, please come forward again. If you could state your name and your address, please.
I'm Kate Hawkins. I live at 29 South Park Street. And I'm also a member of the Bike Walk Committee because I'm very passionate about this town becoming even more safe and vibrant for everybody who lives here. The particular intersection, we've had a lot of great access to information about how decisions have been made, but it's come rather rapidly. So I just want to sign on to thinking about what are the trade-offs? How have we come to a plan that's a change from what was enthusiastically received by the community a couple of years ago, not even that long ago. In terms of the trade-offs, it's currently quite unsafe as a pedestrian, as a biker, and as a driver. If you live in this town, you pass through there many times a day. Everyone is multimodal in some parts of their day. The visibility, we're so thrilled about the lane drop. I'm personally very excited about the lane drop. I think that'll make it a much better experience for everyone there, much safer. So just backing up a request and for information, if we are proceeding without a raised intersection, which is sort of against the best guidance from a lot of similar sized towns, similar communities, and research to make people safer. Why is that? What are the trade-offs that we're looking at when making that decision? I look forward to seeing that information publicly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Other members of the public? Yes, David?
David Vincelet, 93 Lebanon Street in Hanover. Last time I came, the video wasn't working, so I'm gonna read this letter into the record. I gave this letter to the police department January 10th. I'm filing a complaint about the illegal incarceration of me, my family, and a group of people I was housing at 91 and 93 Lebanon Street. I've been asking the Hanover Police Department to investigate the illegal polluting of Mink Brook with asphalt waste and coal tar dumping by Hanover Public Works. The police department refused to investigate and told me to call the Department of Environmental Services. I did contact them, and they eventually investigated and shut down the dumping after asphalt waste was found in Mink Brook upstream from my properties. After my complaints, Hanover decided to put a fence around my property at 91, 93, and 95 Lebanon Street in Hanover. The fence completely barricaded the driveway, which has served my home for many decades. I lived at 93 Lebanon Street for over 40 years. My home and driveway were there many decades earlier. Robert Hausman of the Hanover Zoning Department oversaw the installation of the fence. He had a map to guide him that showed the location of my driveway. He chose to block my historic driveway and left open a path into 95 Lebanon Street that does not serve my home. His action was deliberate and malicious. I'm a disabled veteran with 25 years of service. It is illegal to block a driveway and fire line anywhere in America because we are protected by the Constitution and our right to travel. Robert Houseman, Sergeant Sargent, and Charlie Dennis came to inspect my driveway 5 months after we were restrained in violation of New Hampshire RSA 633:2, restraint of freedom, 18 USC 241 conspiracy against rights, and 18 USC 242 color of law violations. Chief Dennis reported to the selectmen that I was not illegally blocked. During the ensuing 20 and a half months we were held, numerous police and fire officials ignored our cries for help. This is not a complete list, but is a start on those involved who I personally told about a false imprisonment. Chief Charlie Dennis, Captain Mark Bedanza, Captain James Martin, Lieutenant Scabola, Sergeant Sargent, Corporal Altisero, Patrolman Dan Fowler, the fire chief, and the deputy fire chief Hensley. I was awaiting hip replacement surgery at the VA. Because of the illegal blockage, I was not permitted to use my home as a convalescent location. I was able to get a court order to free us in 2018, but the VA had halted surgery due to COVID-19. So I had to wait a total of 4 years for my surgery. My wife, a Ukrainian Jew, has lived through anti-Semitism before. The people I was housing were African-American, disabled, veterans, homeless. And Chief Dennis and Captain Martin were told of these facts, but still refused to help us get free. It wasn't until I got a court order that Mr. Houseman was forced to free us. I have the video. In my opinion, the Hanover government should be designated a criminal organization, since the town manager, selectmen, public works, police department, and fire department all participated in these criminal acts which violated our constitutional rights. I have read the rules published in the police department information for citizens. One portion, part U, makes every officer responsible for seeing that the constitutional rights of all citizens they come in contact with are protected. This ethics requirement has been broken by all the people I previously mentioned. When can I expect an apology? If I have any time remaining, I'd just like to know, or just like you to say for the record, how it's coming to find the answers to the questions I've been asking.
Yeah, as I mentioned to you prior to the meeting, David, we'll get you answers. I know you asked who authorized the use of asphalt on the road base and who participated, I believe. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any further members of the public who wish to address the select board at this time? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Clerk Paolini. I'm a Dartmouth student. And I'm speaking today about the intersection East Wheelock Street and College Street. I'm speaking specifically about, as Hanover Bike Walk has already mentioned, the possibility of making that intersection a race intersection. As far as I've been made aware, this has been previously considered, but was not like formally evaluated recently. And so I'm interested in specifically the things that a raised intersection could do for disabled students on campus. So I'm a disabled student and I'm the vice president of Access Dartmouth, and we're a student group that advocates for accessibility on our college campus. And we're very concerned just in general about the lack of accessibility, physical accessibility of Dartmouth and Hanover. And so any opportunity to make improvements to that is something that we're strongly in favor of. And a raised intersection would be huge for us. So some of the things we're interested in related to this intersection are the benefits that a raised intersection could have for students in wheelchairs, especially in the winter months when there's that accumulation of ice and snow at the curbs. A raised intersection would greatly improve the ability of students in wheelchairs to get around campus. And that intersection specifically is a very dangerous intersection. And it's also one that gets a lot of foot traffic from students because, right, students are coming from from one direction, they're coming maybe from the gym or from the dorms. They may be walking to or from the green. They might be walking to or from the Courtyard Cafe, which is a major dining location, or the Museum of Art, the Low Auditorium, any class they have in the Arts District. And then from other directions, they might be coming from the Collis area. And there's a lot of foot traffic there, and it's a major crossing point. If you want to get to or from any of those locations, you need to cross that intersection. And so that's an area of special interest to Dartmouth students. I won't reiterate what Hanover Bike Walk has already said. I think you're well aware of the benefits of a raised intersection. And I think we're just interested in reaffirming that disabled students on Dartmouth campus care about this, and they want it to be evaluated what the costs and benefits of making that intersection a raised intersection would be. I did already send a letter to you all by email, so I'll just read out the names of some of the students who have signed this, because we couldn't all be here today. So Clark Pelly, that's me, I'm the vice president. Samantha Pale, who is our president. Theo Cuba, Eben De Silva, Caitlin Clark, Braden Baxter, Ella Grimm, Kaya Celestin, Carson Go, Connor Schaefer, Eddie Krager, Ruth Breyer, Marianne Caldwell, Emmy Martinez, who's our secretary, and then finally Kate Wasatz, who is our treasurer. Thank you so much for your concern in this issue, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you, Clark, for speaking to us tonight. Thank you. Okay. Any other members of the public who wish to address the select board at this time? Okay. Seeing none, let's move on. Welcome, office. Let's move on to business requiring discussion. The first item of which is the fiscal year 26 through 31 capital improvement program report. And I believe Jenny Chamberlain is going to be leading us in this discussion, and obviously Rob and Ellen were integrally involved as well. But we're going first to Jenny. I'm looking to the three individuals I named. Jenny, are you going to talk?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll come up here so that you guys can see me.
Okay.
That's hope this works. Hi, I'm Jenny Chamberlain, thank you. I'm the vice chair of the Capital Improvement Program Committee, and we have Terry Callahan, also our secretaries on that committee. And of course, we get a ton of help from Pete and Christina and Ellen and Rob and other staff. Today I'm going to go over.
Starts.
Oh,
Starts.
do I have to just do this? Maybe?
You don't want that.
That's what I was hoping to do because it was normally.
Hit end slideshow and then start slideshow. The little X in the corner.
It works. No, it's just like.
Okay.
That'd be pressure. And make it quick though, right? If it's just limited.
Somehow we're getting dictation on the,
Yes, that's,
just letting you know.
yes. So it has all my words. If you can't hear me, maybe you can read those. So I'm gonna go over four things today. Basically Hanover community's capital needs by the numbers. This is gonna be of two main places, two areas, for years. The first is for FY 26, what's coming up at town meeting. And the second bit is FY 27 to 31, the next 5 years. You add those together, that's the 6-year chunk, that's our capital improvement program. Then we'll go over some process recommendations for the capital improvement program and hopefully answer any of your questions. We'll start with FY 26. We have 17 projects that came in and that we're recommending that you guys fund. In FY 26. If you look forward, there's 138 projects coming up in the following 5 years. And then we have a list sort of for informational purposes because we maintain the database out till the century, end of the century, which brings us to another 261 projects. And then we have like all these 17 projects, 2 of them are new, and the other 15 are what we have been sort of casually referring to as legacy projects. And they are what you are all very familiar with, these projects that we're thinking about repairing and replacing. We're doing fleet turnover, we're painting the water tanks, we're replacing HVACs. And we know that this is gonna come due, and so we have them in the system, and we've been accumulating capital reserves for them. So if we look at the total for FY 26, between those 2 new projects and the other 15 projects, it's a $2 million capital ask. And it's worth noting, as I mentioned, for those 15, we've been sort of saving for those, and for those other 2, those don't have a funding identified at this time. So if we look at these 2 new projects, just to go over what those are, we have the sewer capacity study phase 1 and and the storm drain study also phase 1. For the sewer capacity, we're looking at a $115,000 project. Which was submitted by Public Works. That makes like just under 6% of the new capital ask. And then for the storm drain, that's a $190,000 price tag, which is little over 9% ask. So together, those 2 projects make up 15% of the FY6 funding requests. The other 15 are these sort of repair and replace that I've mentioned. So we'll see on there replacements of some vehicles, backhoes, and the HVAC system I mentioned. And together, that makes up the $2 million. I'll stop right here. Do we have any questions about what these projects are? We have some experts in the room behind me. If we have any detailed questions, the sewer capacity is really looking at what can we hold in our pipes right now. It's phase 1 because it's looking, phase 1 is at the more populated areas, and you'll see we have phase 2 later on. That's looking further in other areas, and the similar things with the stormwater. Like, how is our stormwater working? How prepared are we for the future? Is there any questions about this 2 million? All right, I will.
Okay, sorry. I know that we share capacity with the town of Lebanon. Here, are we looking only at Hanover need?
Yes. It includes all of the things.
This,
Those who
in other
are
words, it's what's currently happening.
currently going to the conditions of the plants and currently flowing through.
Okay,
Study number 1, fiscal year 26 does not include Lebanon, which is different.
Okay.
So this is more focused on the downtown and the more developable for their housing.
And Jenny, in terms of stormwater, is it the urban compact or is it storm?
Yes, urban compact.
And have we ever considered a stormwater utility?
There is statute that allows that. Considered it. It's quite an undertaking. There's no community in the state that actually has one
Okay.
at this point. You'd be first out of the box, out of the gate, and you'd be setting something up. It would run similar to wastewater collection or water supply, probably based on impervious area and that sort of thing. But beyond that, there's no models to follow, so we'd have to develop our own funding mechanism, how we want to fund it, what we want to do. This study intends really to figure out what we've got, what we can handle, and what we need for resilience.
Okay, thanks.
When you say a utility, can you explain that to me?
So as a utility, come up here if it makes sense then. So right now we have two utilities. We have a wastewater.
Yeah.
And we have a drinking water. And it's basically an enterprise fund that stands alone. All the costs in that pot of money have to be spent in that pot of money where we raise funds. So it would be something that would be separate from the general fund. But it would allow improvements that only people or properties that contribute to that flow of water, for instance. So
Thanks.
Thank you. So as you can see for FY 26, we have about 305,000 in new projects and 1.7, little north of 1.7 million in projects that we already have capital reserve for. Looking forward, and this is like the next 5 years, so FY 27 to FY 31, fiscal year 27 to 31. We have some additional new projects coming down the pipe. We have sort of 5 slated right now for fiscal year 27, 2 for fiscal year 28, 2 for 29, and so on. And you'll see there's some lumpiness in the project price tag. If we look at this laid on top of our previously scheduled asset replacements, what we've done here is just circle the ones north of 10 million. So you can see where the bigger projects are falling right now. Now, we have not made recommendations as a committee. These are all for future consideration. But I wanted to make sure everybody could see what we have now already collected from departments. And you're looking at, for new projects, over the next 5 years, it would be, if we funded all these, it would be about 60% of our capital asks, and the existing ones would be 40%. So we'd be looking at, if we're investing in our future with some of these new projects, it'd be really rethinking how we think about our capital program and our investments. Do you have any questions there? In FY 27, to give you a little bit more insight into what we have for the next year, we have the Howe Library building envelope upgrade, which came up last year. The Howe sidewalk and retaining wall that needs replacement. That's literally the wall as you walk in on the right. The downtown Hanover to Station Village multi-use path to get people safely between downtown and Station. And then sewer capacity study phase 2 and storm drainage study phase 2. And then out in the future, in the next 5 years, this is just a sample of a couple of them, but we have some of these larger projects like South Main reconstruction, Greensboro Road, Great Hollow Road, Etna Road ownership transfer. We have the second addition to the Etna Library, the Etna Village redesign and construction, and a redo of the Howe Library HVAC system. Okay, so, do I need to go back? Are there questions about that?
I was just gonna emphasize, I think you said it, but the committee took no position with respect to the FY 27 through 31. Although you're gonna talk about process improvements that would change that, I think, right? But I just wanted to make that clear.
Correct.
Yes, yep, okay.
So we have made a formal recommendation that those 17 projects that I spent a little bit longer time on, with the 2 new stormwater and sewer water studies, and the 15 that were in our sort of capital replacement program. The recommendation from the committee is that we fund those. And then for the following 5 years, we have listed all the projects and we've gotten them in, but we have not had the time to dig deep into them. And we have not made any formal recommendation. So we put them on as for future consideration.
But in the future, the CIPC will be like looking further out. It was just this year that you couldn't get to it. Is that right?
Oh,
I think the hope is, let's see, go over the recommendations and see if it's answers your question.
Alright.
But that's a very good question, but yes, the idea is the capital improvement program can, covers 6 years.
Yeah.
And it is evaluating the projects based on urgency and need. Which, right now is sort of translating to what year it's going to come forward. There's of course a lot of other things that goes into capital planning, like coordinating between departments, thinking about things, holistically and strategically about when we're going to invest in what. This is part of the process of building up this list, seeing what types of investment we think the town needs to make based on what the departments are submitting, and then organizing it into a robust program. So we have 3 recommendations that are left over from last year. So they're going to be familiar, so we'll go over these fast. One is allocate sufficient time. And that's starting in July, getting submissions, or putting out the call for submissions. So that hopefully by August, we can have some submissions. These are coming in from the department. And by September, we have initial proposal evaluations. And October, we can have some public hearings. And then by November, we can start making our preliminary recommendations, do some more outreach, and then start drafting our report for January, so we can be standing here again next year. The other thing is to implement a sort of enterprise-wide capital management platform, so that we don't just have one spreadsheet managing all these assets, but we can really do like have an interdepartmental view into what's going on and coordination, and everything would not sort of fall on one person during a very, very intense budget period. And this will be a way of like managing a lot of assets more comprehensively, as well as relieving bottlenecks. The next would be to promote alternative financing of capital improvement projects. And we talked some about how to promote this. And our proposal right now is that as people propose projects, probably in consultation with our various code staff, they come up with some ideas as to how they might fund those as well. The Capital Improvement Program Committee doesn't oversee those types of decisions, but we thought it's worthwhile to bring proposals with ideas of funding so that we really start thinking about how we're going to get these improvements made. As for the new recommendations this year, the idea is next year we include only qualifying projects and assets. Qualifying is not a term used to decide whether it's good or bad. Qualifying is a standard that we set for how large and how long the projects are supposed to last, like their useful life, so that they rise to the occasion to be put into this capital improvement program. So what the committee had decided was it should be assets that cost over $100,000 and that have a useful life of over 8 years. Now, without that cap, we're looking at hundreds of individual items. And the idea is to look at these larger programs. Sometimes this means some of these smaller things will be rolled up into bigger programs, so that we can have a more strategic view of what we're investing in and deal with these big projects on a more substantive level. We'll still need to vet the capital replacements as part of the town's regular capital asset financing process. The next recommendation is to require sort of full proposals. And this is about communicating what type of detail we're expecting, so that we can get an understanding of what the projects are. And a lot of this will start with, like, right now we have 29 projects that already meet that qualification of being over $100,000 and longer than 8 years in useful life. And we have a varying amount of details about those projects. As we're supposed to judge their urgency need, it will be useful to have a more complete application, basically. So we want to start there. Another recommendation, and this is for the select board, is that as projects are not moved forward and funded, we thought it would be helpful as a committee to get feedback so that we can convey that to the sponsors of the projects and give them information about what would make their proposal stronger. Or just some explanation as to like, should you apply again next year? Is it just about the timing or like what's going on? Just to close that information loop. And then the final suggestion is to invite community members to offer suggestions for capital improvement projects. And the idea is that we can announce this at the start of the capital improvement process and invite stakeholders, like reach out to particular groups who we know may have ideas, and have them submit them through the appropriate departments. And then this is way too small for me to see, but maybe you can, these are the 29 projects that are coming up in 27, 28, 29 by way of example of some of the projects that we would hope would have very robust applications. Any questions?
Jane, when you talk about projects that weren't funded, you get back to people. Will you also have the folks who are successful in this process go back to the department or go with the committee to the departments and say, hey, I found this kind of thing to work, or you might want to slow it down or make it more detailed? Will you? Because you'll have successful applicants, to kind of act as big brothers, big sisters to the unsuccessful.
Yeah, I think part of our job is showing people examples of successful projects. We have some examples. We can always have more. There are always projects that don't conform to ones that have come forward in the past. And then there's also baked into the timing here is if we get this timing right, there's more time for questions. So the hope is that if people now are thinking ahead about, okay, we're going to maybe put in a proposal for a capital improvement project and an expenditure request, and we know it's coming up. If they can either maybe bring it earlier and get some feedback, or we have a little time where they can come and present and answer questions with things that they didn't maybe know or they should have included in the application. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions? And thanks again to all staff who have come through our many months of meetings.
Yes.
And John Dolan,
thank you.
Really wish he could be here, but not more than he wished to be adventuring in Patagonia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks,
That was
Jenny.
terrific. And thanks to John, who's not here, but did a lot of work. And together with Pete, who's been spearheading this effort for a while. And we appreciate your time, and Christina, who gave a great presentation on stormwater and wastewater studies. And I think as we move on in the rest of the presentation, I think you have some funding suggestions for those, which is great. So any other questions, comments? No. So let's move forward to Public Works, which I know is in several pieces. So Pete, thank you. Welcome. Yes.
Before we get started, I just wanted to thank Pete and Helen for working hard and his staff bringing this together. And Ellen's been behind the scenes doing a heavy lift with the department heads, and I'm grateful for all the work that's going on behind the scenes. And Pete, I'd ask that you introduce your staff.
Sure, that's why I brought them. They don't get out of it that easily. So we'll start back. I've got John Douglas, who's our new building superintendent. We placed Ross, so he's a slimmed down Ross. You can work on, I don't think you want to catch him. And then there's Wesley, and I call him by his brother's name often because his brother works for us too, Wyatt. So it can be difficult to forget the names. He's a new fleet superintendent, and we placed Don Foster. So both come with
Welcome.
experience,
Yes.
a lot of energy and good ideas and things that hopefully move us forward, not just replace what we had, but give us new perspective. So
Right.
and I can't forget Jim Cray over here on the side here. He took over our highways and utilities. So he manages the day-to-day operations of what happens on the ground for all the utilities, all the water projects and operations and plowing and then we move tonight, right? So if you complain about the snowbank out here tonight, come out tonight, you'll see the dance that happens after every storm. I can't forget Christina Hall, who a lot of the stuff wouldn't happen without her. So very, very valuable of experience in helping to put together projects, keep the team together, pushing me to do things that I'm comfortable doing, which is what I need from her. But I think we've come a long way and we've built a new staff and I'll go in the slides, I'll show you a couple little details of it. I'm gonna give you the higher overview. Let me get this to work. All right, just in case you don't know what we do, we take care of all the infrastructure, buildings, roads, fleet, water, sewer, drainage, anything to do with infrastructure, and we also do energy purchasing. We manage other people's buildings, heating, by power, by fuel, so we manage all that too to try to make sure we have things together, as well as the capital planning to help look at facilities and equipment, as well as we get into design. I occasionally get to do design, which I really like to do. And Christina does as well. So we pull together a lot of projects to try to get things upgraded, accomplished, new ideas, trying to work with contractors and other engineers, projects coming from the college, from private developers. We oversee all that, making sure they will be good additions to our community and impact our infrastructure, or how they might and how we might deal with that. We also do all the bidding of projects, purchasing of large equipment, small equipment, office supplies, consumables. We have a staff that does that as well. And then all the repair and maintenance of all the items in the public. A lot of things. I mean, if you list them as a lot. We have people who know what to do in the area, so we don't all have to know everything. Fortunately, we have some really great people in there. This is kind of the overview of the general fund, folks. I'm going to get into the other utility funds separately. So we have obviously myself and Christina, then we have Aaliyah Lucas, who is our administrative assistant. She basically answers the phones, does our payroll, does our work order system, and just make sure we coordinate how we coordinate things to our permitting system. She's on top of that. Adrian was in that role before. Now she does our finance piece, which is, I don't know, 4,500 invoices a year. It seems like every time I look around, there's a stack of them I have to go through. A lot has to be done to go through to make sure we spend money wisely and the way it's appropriately. So she keeps track of all that. And then you get into three of the departments that are general fund departments. I've introduced Jim, Wesley, and Sean. So that's the general how they go together. Now getting down another layer. Oops, not too fast. And I go way too fast. There we go. Maybe hard to read this. This is so we're broken into basically we'll go through the utilities and highways. So I'm not going to go through everybody's name. Everybody can read that if you want to. Basically, we have a highway and utilities. They work together quite often. And for instance, if there's a water main break, there will be people from the highway department helping dig the hole, haul materials, bring equipment in, and labor as well, and work too. So the utilities, when I'm talking about utilities, it's really the water and sewer distribution and collection system. It's not the treatment or pumping piece. That's done by our treatment and treatment staffs on both water and wastewater. So they deal with the pipes in the ground, essentially pipes, manholes, valves, fixing breaks, and they've had a lot of experience in the last week and a half or so with a series of water main breaks. This is not unusual for when you have some really cold weather. Then you have the frost is penetrating, and you end up getting this sort of thing happen quite often.
I saw the one by the Howe, were there more?
There was two on Main Street down by, one in front of CVS.
Okay.
There's one right in front of, the, gas station. And there's a valve that's leaking right now. We have to replace tomorrow because it's icing up the road. We can't stop it from leaking. There was one up on North Main up by, what was that? I can't remember this. 34, North College Street. So some of them are service lines, some of them are mainline breaks. And then there was one off in Rayton, we had a break, then we found a leak in, over by Foxville, what was it? I can't remember when that was exactly. So they're throughout town, those, first one was something we were just watching the tanks go down and say, we got something going on here, so. A lot of investigative, these guys are pretty good investigators, trying to figure things out. Try to figure out why pumps are running longer, so there's a lot of thought goes into trying to find things, and some of those things in other communities, they would never know they were there until something catastrophically fails, so they're catching things before that happens. Moving on, the fleet, we have, Wesley has a senior mechanic and two, mechanics, one's part-time right now, Larry, who we really love, and he's the oldest in the group. I can say that because I'm the second oldest in the group, but he's the oldest in the group, and he's retired and works part-time. He's got 10 years on me, so he's not gonna be working a lot longer, but he likes it. So as long as he likes it, he'll keep coming back. So as long as you treat him right. And he will. Moving on to our facilities. Facilities is broken into really two pieces. Fixing things and then maintaining things. So we have a custodial staff, and then we have our technicians that do the repairs of things, and Sean does both in the middle of it, and he does all the repairs of HVAC stuff, and he's doing stuff painting, and so jack of all trades, and actually master of several of them, so it's not good. It's done some good work. I was very nervous when Ross left. I went with a tour with him. Every week I'd go to a different building, and after a month and a half, I had this note. I scribbled down notes. I couldn't read them. I gave them to Sean to read. I don't think he can read them, but I was very nervous that there was a lot of things that could go sideways, and the transition was smooth, which I'm.
Ross did a wonderful job. He was.
Yes, Ross was just great, and it left a big hole. I think Sean is going to fill that quite well. It brings us new talents.
Real question is, you do clocks? Okay.
You're gonna have to go find Ross for that. Now, this is a little hard to read with the lighting, kind of a mission statement. I won't go through all the details. Essentially, this is what we do and why we do it. Any questions on here? I'm not gonna just go through and read a line, you can read yourself. Moving on, overview of budgets from current budget to next year's budget. You notice that this doesn't happen very often. We have actually our budget going down next year, and the biggest reason for that is turnover. And I'll go through that. We'll have a slide further down. I think it's 57% of our staff in the last 3 years has left and been replaced, and it's mostly retirements. So, and that's not unusual for, really is a testament to a community where the people want to work here. These people have been here 20, 25 years. Those are the people retiring. It's not people who've been there 5 years coming and going. There have been times when that's happened, but it's been a very stable environment, at least in public works. So it was a rough time, and it's something that I wasn't used to. I don't think I ever had any time I had more than one position open at a time, and there were times I had 9 or 10 open positions at the same time, and it was like constantly hiring, but while you're still trying to work. So it was very, very challenging. So total budget's down. Personnel costs, that you can see the big drop there. Operations, you can see it's up, and it's up, and I'll go through some of the slides and show you why it's up. Capital, about the same amount, and I threw into capital, not just the things in the CIP, but things that we call capital that are smaller items and not that funded operating budget funds, so they don't show up in the capital process. But they're really building things, and I've talked to Ellen about, we need to probably separate those so it's a little clearer, so that when the CIP committee reports something, our numbers are the same, not vastly different. But this represents other things. Just try to say these are really things that are longer term physical things that need to be changed. Examples would be like a door or some control systems that might require more work and they last a long time. And they're much less expensive.
So
Alright,
they
so-
have like a life of,
They have variable life. There's not a single thing, and I think of some of these things like got a small furnace. It may last 50 years.
Yeah,
Another one may last 20. Depends on what they are, the environment they're in. There's a lot of other things like that, or they could be like lighting. There might be some lighting on a building that will last 10 years. Other places it'll last 20. It depends on the environment. If it's inside, it will last a lot longer than the outside, or if it's in a hazardous environment, a lot shorter because of the caustic chemicals or what's going on or moisture and things. So going into some of our changes, I'll go through these line by line so you can see what they are. Our IT charges and the changes here are increases. We have some computer replacements that we didn't have in the current budget. That's really, this is all our software and any hardware we have up slightly, a few $1,000s, and that's all related to computer replacements. I put in the charges to fire fund, water fund and wastewater fund. These are back charges and they're based on the wages. So when the wages go up or down, those numbers go up and down. So they're charges of the wages related to, for instance, part of my salary goes is a charge to water fund and wastewater fund, and the same with Christina's. Part of hers is the water fund and wastewater. So there's different formulas depending on what we do and what the position is. You can see the staffing level. This is just the admin salaries. There hasn't been turnover. There's been one person change, so this one went up. Then I go into the CIP. This is where I plugged in the stormwater study. I plugged it into this line. I just had a placeholder. Kristen, is this one that has a potential grant?
The stormwater.
Stormwater. That's,
We don't know.
we don't. So maybe a grant that can pay for it. So we'll apply for it. We might get it. We might not. It's in the bottom line budget included, still with a decrease of 0.6%. So it's included in that number. Moving on to our copier costs, lease and maintenance, we have a plotter that does our large wide scan. We do it for plans. We do it for any time people need posters, maps like these. The one we have, we can't get the heads for anymore. And once they fail, we don't have a plotter anymore. And we'll have to go and contract it or send them to a third party. This would replace it with a different technology. So that's what the increase would be. The next line item is dues and memberships, and we added last year we negotiated stipends for certain positions for CDLs and licenses, grade 2 distribution or treatment licenses. There's a stipend that was negotiated. This is where they show up here. There's I don't remember the exact numbers. There's 13 CDLs and there's a bunch of other people with CDLs and water distribution and treatment licenses. You get one or the other, you don't get both. So it totals out. That's the difference in numbers. Recycling contract. Interesting, this was down, not because our prices went down, because last year when we went in the budgets, we were looking for the cost of what the processing fee, and they told us it was going to be a much lower level of revenue, and it was going to be a higher cost. And as we went through the year, we found out no, it wasn't. They were ultra conservative. The numbers are going up, but the costs that they estimated is actually much lower than what it should have been.
I'll explain that again.
So there's two parts to our recycling. There's a collection piece, which goes up by the CPI each year. And then there's the processing fee. And the processing fee when they sell materials, they take whatever that fee is, say it's $150,000 a ton, and they sell materials and the materials go for say $50 a ton. That reduces that number by $50. They were telling us last year it's gonna be like $20. It's been in the $50 or $60 range very steadily, and that's basically paper and metals, not plastics, but papers and metals that are really good markets for still. That could change. Because that's market driven, so you could leave that number higher and you'd have a buffer. I'll talk about one of the risks at the end. We have some other risks we'll talk about for budgets, but that's the driver for there is, that's why that was down. Thank you. You're welcome. A little bit more detail here, charges, back charges. Salaries are down, like I said, overtime wages will be down as well because the rates are lower. Back charges to other departments are lower because of lower rates. Our leases and rentals are down. We have 2 leases that are ongoing. This year, we pay one off is one of the sidewalk machines, which is in the capital budget. Next time it gets replaced, we've been putting money in the reserve to replace it. We added a 3rd machine 8 years ago, I think 7 years ago. And we started the funding by doing a lease, and then we started putting money into reserve, so that next replacement would actually be drawn from reserve. That gets this current fiscal year, last payment for that. The second lease is for a loader, which next year will be our last, this would be the last payment for that, and that would be the last lease we would have on that. We're gonna recommend not replacing that, but we have some added costs, specifically less, so we can actually use some of the equipment, so we can actually do without it going forward. So going beyond that, let's see, where am I? Signal replacement, current years, we had two intersections, we had control boxes and signals replaced. This one here is something that went through the CIP. It's the Southern 11th Street video detection system. The current one there is, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. The control boxes last 20 years. The videos last, the control box is 10, videos are 5. When we replace the control box, we replace the video as well. So in between, we just replace the video system. So the next time it will just be the control box, the video will be included, and then 10 more years from now, it'll be another something of this nature. It'll be obviously different cost, but around this nature. And that's the case with all of our signals. We have 9 signal systems in town. The next one is a bike ped improvement, which is basically a section of sidewalk that's missing. It's from Main Street to School Street. There's a gap on the south side of Maple Street. And the timing of that is we won't have enough time staff wise to actually do a lot of this work this year. So the downtown plan, looking at the streetscape that is being worked on right now, that'll be done before we do any work. If we have to modify what we're doing, we can modify it. So it's scheduled in the CIP to be done, funded this year. We have one actually, we funded one 3 years ago that we just, actually 4 years ago, we just finished in Verona last year. We had another one we just finished on Crosby that was in 3 years ago. We have one that was in 2 years ago on Reservoir Road, which we'll get to this summer. That's what we'll do first. So we have time, which I doubt it because we still have to finish College Street. We have some curbing left to be done. It's the intersection, and there's some top coating and some other things that need to be done as part of that project.
When you do Reservoir, would you consider doing a 3-way stop there?
That should be considered separately, but certainly can be looked at.
At that Strong Trail, or?
This goes from a Strong Tail to Ledge Road.
Ledge Road.
She's talking about putting a stop
Ledge
on
and
Ledge Road.
Reservoir.
That could be, I mean, that should be looked at now.
Yeah,
independent.
no, I mean, and coming, just because there's way more traffic than there used to be.
Right.
So kids are biking, grown-ups are biking.
When we have a new police chief, that'll be a discussion we'll have with him about.
Great.
Does he feel it's warranted there, and we'll look at the safety and best location to make sure it's gonna work. The previous chief would have put a stop sign at every intersection, which that was his recommendation to stop people, but obviously that's not the case. This is certainly a place that would be
So
warranted.
to be thought of in conjunction with whether or not the girls, there's the proposal for the Girl Brook Trail to let out, and then, there's a path around the grade school that could be made more accessible down the Oak Hill.
Yeah, no, I was-
That's like the other side, that's the
Yeah.
other side
It's
there.
a totally different.
Yeah, it's a totally
thing.
different.
This is
Just- I just
connecting
knew
strong
that the-
trails.
It's-
Strong Trail, I mean, that's what, 100 yards maybe.
Yeah,
if
it's not that
that.
long.
And so the idea was, if you're putting people to that intersection, might not be a bad idea to have a stop sign there, that's all.
Yep, that's certainly something we could look at. Moving on to gravel roads program materials, it's a price increase, just the price is more expensive, that's just, it represents that. In terms of the capital, this is the road construction is the when the signals are, that's in that reserve. We've been having discussions about rolling the bridge reserve, which has money sitting in it, into the this program here. And so we'd have one that does roads and bridges instead of two separate ones. That might be a way, and we could potentially, we would actually have to reduce the contribution. We haven't run the numbers yet. We'll look at that and see, does it make sense to roll those together? And what would we need to contribute into that reserve? Keeping in mind, when you roll it together, now you have the bridges that have to be considered. Assuming we use the same logic, moving forward that we did in the last bridge replacement, it'd likely be bonded, so then you would see significant cost decrease or need to put less money into here, so there would be a reduction potentially for the next few years into this line item.
But that was the first time we ever bonded, right? For
Yes.
Bridges,
Yes.
or for pretty much anything.
Yes.
No, the
Looking at
methods we
happens.
use, we're not replacing the full superstructure, we were using a much, and it's only appropriate in certain areas, we couldn't use this on some of the main roads. Some of the main roads you're building, you're talking, what we bonded wouldn't even cover the engineering costs. So we were able to do 6 bridges for that price, and if you did the traditional design process, it would take several years to go through the process. It's eligible for bridge aid, but the bridge aid is a 10-year waiting list. So anything that goes on there, you'd have to wait 10 years to be funded. And assuming there's funding, and the funding comes from federal highway, assuming there is a federal highway in 10 years, they might be not.
Or next year,
Or
or next week.
And next year.
So that's something we have not built into our models, thinking we can rely on that, and this is a way to self-sustain things.
Yeah, I don't want to hold you up here, but going back a little bit, the recycling program, I remember there was some analysis that we were paying a lot for single stream. Are we still looking at maybe going away from single stream?
We need some time. We're gonna be talking with the vendor as well as all the other communities are in the same boat. So we're having this discussion amongst all the communities saying, you know what? We're all seeing the same thing. Now, where's this material going? We need an analysis. We know it goes to the MRF. We know it leaves the MRF, but where does it go? What is actually going to market? What are we getting for revenues in each stream? Are we getting $50 for cardboard and it costing you $10 to get rid of the plastics? And where does the plastic go? If it's spending money, is it actually going into products or is it just being dumped someplace? We don't know. And that's something that I'm not sure we're gonna get a straight answer, because when we went to the MRF, once it leaves the hands of Casella, they don't control what happens to it. And that's something we can look at. There are other places we can look at. For instance, EcoMaine, they're managed by a consortium out of Maine that will actually take the materials. They'll tell you exactly where it's gonna go. And you can look at that as a model. It's a different resource recycling facility. It works differently. They have different markets, but that's a model we can look at to say, what do they see? What do they see for the bang for the buck? What's the cost that we said our material there? We actually own the material that's picked up. We just contract Casella to take it someplace and process it. We can take it, have it picked up or collected and take it to EcoMaine if we wanted to. So we have that option. That's something we'll have to investigate.
We're meeting as soon as Wednesday with
Yes.
Casella and the Upper Valley Municipal Managers Association is meeting regularly, monthly on this topic. Our recommendation would be to seek a 1-year extension of the contract to give us an opportunity to look at all of our options.
Great. Thank you.
I promised this fellow came to Hanover Bike Walk about just like exiting the co-op, but then he wanted to pass along that the sidewalk improvement on Crosby has changed his wife's life, like that she's in a mobility scooter and so are a bunch of her friends, and they can now like participate a lot more. And
Good to hear, good news.
so I'm passing that along. He was,
Thank you.
yeah.
Was it Lebanon, Sand Hill?
No, it was, the more recent,
Yeah.
the more recent stuff around, Lebanon Street and Crosby and,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So Pete, just, looking through the various budgets, there seem to be some themes that are going to be recurring items in your explanations. So maybe we just talk about those so that,
Fair enough.
so I mean, look
How about
like,
if I show you the slide, you guys have questions, if you want to go through it that way as well.
well, I mean, you
Or if there's
mentioned,
something I want to point out is a big,
you mentioned the employee turnover, which is very
Yes.
evident in the numbers. And then also there seems to be less overtime budgeted.
that's just wages are cheaper. Overtime
okay.
rate is less. It's the
I
same
think-
number of hours. It's just
see.
the price per
Yes.
hour
Got it.
has gone down because of essentially cheaper employees because they're lower in our pay scale.
Right. Lower electric rates and lower fuel.
Yes.
That's just the environment we're in.
So lower fuel, we've actually locked in rates for fuel, assuming the vendors actually can hold their prices and we don't see tariffs. I have a slide at the end, which I'll talk a little bit about. We usually bid and lock in our rates before budgeting. We have them locked in already and they're down from last year. Electrical rates, they're down. We locked in before the CPC&H rate increase, so we're locked in at that. And so those will go through that a little bit, and there's some reallocation about where the money was going to. Some buildings were paying more than their share, and the buildings were paying less, and it's a little complicated because we have these PPAs that costs are shifted depending on how much power it makes, and we had no data, so we have data now. It's much more easy to follow. One thing that I have, we actually have I'm not gonna I could tell you a little place to go look. It's gonna be complicated. On our website, we have some of the real-time data for buildings that we have e-gauges. You're really bored some night, you wanna go spend a lot of time looking at data, real-time data about how
Insomnia.
much power we make on buildings, not the two big arrays, but all the other buildings. Although one array is there, the water plant. You can see how much we generate, wastewater plant, what uses all the power, the blowers, or is it the digesters? And so if you're really interested in that sort of thing. I know I am. But so we're getting to the point now, we have more data that we can actually look at and actually show what some of the improvements over the years has actually done. We'll be building a dashboard that hopefully we'll get when we have a new sustainability coordinator. That's one of the things I want to make sure we get up, the electricity and then fuel dashboards, and not just the fuel for our building usage, but also our fleets, so we can see how we use energy townwide. It's something we can find the information, but it's drilling down through spreadsheets that 3 different people have, and they collect data differently and trying to pull those together. So it's right now, there's not a standardized way of doing it because it's not been a priority. So hopefully we'll get that straightened out.
Okay, thank you.
One thing here, and before I leave this slide, at the very bottom, it says 30,000. Actually, we moved that back up by 27,000. We had moved our winter maintenance costs, actually in our highway winter maintenance. That's what we've been doing for the last several years. I wanted to put money back into this so we could focus on making repairs to Main Street. We have a lot of money we're gonna be spending on Main Street. These are areas that no matter what we do for a plan on Main Street, wouldn't be changed. They're basically the section that's isn't gonna get narrower, it's gonna get wider. So we're looking at areas that are tripping hazards. If you go up there now, you'll see spots where this coal patch, the hot mix, the sand mix, just so that it's not tripping, people aren't tripping. We wanna try to do this. This is not gonna get it
So
all
which
done.
line is that?
It's the last item here, sidewalk construction.
Oh, okay.
materials. If you look at the,
At 56,000.
yeah, it should be in the 56,000 range.
Yeah.
That's the number in the PDF, without the details, the number's already been adjusted. These were changed, we were working these very close to the time I was submitting them. That day, I think we made like 8 changes to numbers and this is one we missed. Moving on, big changes. I just hit the big highlights if you want me to. Capital reserve, increases, those are related to, just balancing reserves. Anything out there, anything else anybody see in there they'd like to?
So the
More detail on?
street, I didn't understand the street lighting
So
comments.
street lighting, that's something I'm still working on. So all the, Cobra headlights have been changed. They're all LED now. They also have and I told Rod I was gonna do it, I actually did it, and nobody's complained yet. I've actually gone and I broken the town into different areas, high activity areas, neighborhoods, intersections. So they have different lighting schemes, so some are brighter at certain times of night and lighter at other times of night. You'll have to be up 3 o'clock in the morning to see some of them. But if you come out and watch the snow removal, maybe you can see some of them. The downtown areas will be the higher activity, will have to be on lighter, brighter for longer. Neighborhoods they'll dim when there's fewer people out. So
They'll
that's
say,
the
go
ability.
to bed.
What's that?
They'll say, go to bed.
Go to bed, yeah. Yes, get off your computer.
So they play a
those are things that
lullaby.
We'll have the ability to do going forward. And it's something we'll bring to the board, a policy so that if there are recommended changes that neighborhoods may want to see something different, it should be something that the board says, we want to have a policy that allows us to make changes so that I'm not changing a light and then another neighbor wants it changed to something else. Because we've done that before and I don't want to be in the middle of that. Something that's fairly standard. But we should see the electricity costs, probably half of that number that I put in here for next year. The overall electricity, if you take all of them together, they are down, even with this going up. It was just the allocation. I don't know when Liberty is actually going to give us the right tariff. They should be giving us back to last July, so we should see actually money back. That's why the note of this should go down. That's what we anticipate until we have an answer. That's what it's going to be. So it will be somewhere probably in the 40,000 or less. Because part of that tariff is not just energy, it's also the allowable recovery costs of the fixtures, which we own now. So they shouldn't be charging us for those. Trying to get a true accounting has been a joy. In 3 years of asking for numbers. I finally got what they say we have for lights. But when we put lights out, there is probably 40 of them that don't exist. So
were we leasing the bulbs before?
so we're basically it's the way the PUC regulations work is you're allowed to recover the undepreciated cost over the life of a fixture. So if they have a 20-year life, so we're paying that undepreciated cost as part of their rate. So they get a certain rate of return to make sure they can actually change the lights in the future. So we were paying for that. That's the way it is for any utility. You're paying for assets as they retire. You're paying so that the utility can then reinvest in the future. In theory, that they should keep them all in a good condition. They do some things, they don't other things. Liberty actually does a pretty decent job of it. Can't say the rest of the grid does it that way, but Liberty does a pretty decent job of that. So we'll no longer have those costs because it'll be our costs, but we will have to then figure out how to plug that into a reserve or just thinking in the future, we're gonna have to replace these lights. Now that we have them, we own them, we're gonna have to figure out replacing them. It'll be far cheaper than we're paying now, but it'll be something we have to think about.
I think your question was, we didn't own them before.
We did know, sorry.
Yeah.
No, yeah, okay, all right, thanks.
This was a big
And-
transition.
Yeah, every single one, so we can program them all now? Or
All
are
except
there,
for the ornamental ones.
Okay.
I'm waiting for that, a waiver, which I'm not sure there'll be a DOE to give me the waiver, but we're moving forward anyway. Because part of the changeover, there is a NH stage rebate, which will pay whatever the feds would have been responsible. We can do those lights as well. So that's the plan right now.
Thank you.
Moving on. Let's see, any significant changes? You can see the overtime. This is where you can see the wages down. These are wages down, even though the wages are going up. That's showing you that that's how much they're going down, considerably less expensive. Obviously, that's not gonna be next year. Next year, we'll see these start going up again. Traffic signal replacement, this is the expense. We saw the appropriation for the reserve, this is the expense. The item, this is machinery, 420, 47, 41. There's an attachment for the loader. We can use on the backhoes, that we can take the equipment that we use the loader for. So we no longer have to have a lease going forward with that loader. This allows us to do that. Moving on, the admin, I'm going the wrong direction, and I say, this looks familiar. Moving on to buildings, you can see the same thing here, new hires, so our wages are lower, so the back charges will be lower. The flex, I think was something that was double charged, so we're now much lower, this is more reflecting what the flex plan should be. The transfer to reserves is down, excuse me, up because of just the equipment that's coming up in future years. This is all the lighting we just went through. Moving on to DPW, there's one here that's an increased cost, it's a building capital maintenance. It's the unit heaters in our equipment storage bay, they are oil and one of them's got a crack in the boiler, another one is leaking. So they need to be replaced. We're gonna replace them with propane, which is way more energy efficient, and it'll be something that'll give us time to allow us to heat the building before we end up changing to heat pumps. This will be, at least in the future, this will be a backup.
How does that work with you guys suffer the same inability to get heat pumps that the residences suffer, or is there?
We haven't done any heat pump replacement for a while, so we get most of the ones we've replaced were done prior to the shortage. So we weren't affected by that. The next big buildings when the CIPs are police and fire, the fire has a police station. That's out a few years, so hopefully the market's stable then. And then a few years after that, it would be DPW, but that's out quite a ways. One big one for the Howe library, excuse me, Edna library decrease, but there is the capital projects there is actually gutters. There'll be copper gutters because that's one of the three historic buildings in town. Is the
Because there's only three.
The Sphinx, the Great Hall Bridge, and Edna Library, nothing else. That's in the historic register.
We do have a national landmark on the historic register, the Orozco murals,
Yeah.
but no other buildings.
So it comes with notoriety, but also comes with restrictions, and that's part of the reason why Dartmouth doesn't do it, because they would be restricted on what they can do and how they do it. When we did the addition to Edna Library, there was a process, and we ended up, actually, we wanted to put standing seam, but they told us it wouldn't look right, so we ended up going to shingle, so you know, that's part of the process. The Great Hall Bridge was just stones, and we reused them, so it was not a big deal.
Is there any big place to park, so
Yes, there's a parking lot. Just-
right by your house?
Well, if you pull into 9 Great Hollow Road, which is the entrance to.
Yep.
There's a little parking lot right at the entrance. It's set aside for the actual trail that's across the street.
Thought you were inviting us all over.
You can come to my house. It's a horseshoe driveway, so the first one in's first one out.
Well, you back out.
Or you can-
The other capital expense here is in the police department. There's a $30,000 increase in the CIP to do the control systems. That's a really complicated mechanical system that has a lot of issues that Ross has struggled with over the years. This is an upgrade to help make sure it doesn't fail. And there's a door, an exterior door that has a security door that's they're pretty expensive, $16,443, I think is what the number is for a door.
high level there. Come on, we'll be here all night
Yes,
talking
sorry,
about
sorry.
$16,443.
Let's move on to the fleet. Skim through this quicker. Back charges. Repair costs outside, transfer to reserves. Any questions?
You're good. Okay.
Fuel, low cost, that's pretty simple. And the transfers in and out of reserves.
I do have a quick question, though. So we're seeing these decreases because a lot of people have retired and, we try to put money into reserves so we don't get, we don't have these dips and valleys and should there be like a salary reserve? I mean, not that you can do that, but it just feels like we're seeing everyone else in everyone else's department, it's going up. So are we gonna have a gradual increase or are we gonna get hammered? I would say
think
it's
you
probably
get
gradual,
when you
right?
get hammered is when people retire.
Okay,
It's like when I retire, I'll have a big bank of hours I didn't spend.
Yep.
There's a payout. That's where we get hit.
okay,
And we did get hit by a bunch of. people.
okay, so that might
something that-
explain.
You need to figure out. I'll give you 4 years.
I think this is quite an extraordinary
Okay,
situation. However, it's a great point as we look across the different departments where we might have our more experienced staff getting ready to retire and bringing in new staff. But I think this turnover is
It's
pretty
unique.
unusual.
Yeah.
thank you.
Right, moving on. Looking at just personnel, the same number of people, 25 and a half, 26, we rounded up, 25.6. These 3 days a week, so I give him credit for that extra few hours he's here. So there's no increases. I broke out wages and benefits so you can see how that, this is for buildings, highways, fleet and admin. That's all collectively.
And Pete, was it last year that you dropped a position to
Yes.
fund salaries? Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Here's some of the capital expenses. I went through these already. I can go, whatever you want me to go through, if you want to go through it again, or just. These are highway and admin things. These are all things that were reviewed by the CIP committee. Some of them detailed, some is not as much detailed.
Questions? No. No.
Municipal transportation, there's the sidewalk. Road construction is the video detection on Summer and Lebanon Street. These are the buildings. These are all the detail I just went through. So if you'd like to go over any more of these, I can do that.
And the video detection that controls the stoplight.
Yeah, it's basically this, we used to have like wires in the ground.
Yeah.
It does the same thing. It's the videos then has a AI that says, okay, this is a person, this is a vehicle. And it detects them in a box and then it has a program that tells which vehicle or person goes next. It's all the controls and detecting people or vehicles. And it can't tell who people are. And it can't read license plates, which is something that state law doesn't allow you to do. Right. But we can tell if it's a bus. We can tell if it's a bicycle. We have that, but some of the intersections have that ability to do that. And you just have to pay for the extra software. It's like another $5,000 when you put them in. So you can actually get that level of analysis if you want to.
And can that video feed be used for?
It's not actually video when you go to look at it in the past. It's actually stills. So it's not really that practical.
The data is there.
The data is there.
Okay. But if there was like an accident or something and we had to, it wouldn't really.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done that, partly because no one's asked, but I think
I mean, we have, with
We
the
will
whole
give access to
downtown
the
is
police.
videotape, right? Like.
we give access to the police department, they can do it. Because we don't want to be involved with that sort of, this is really so we can look at traffic counts, pedestrian counts, so we can tell what's happening.
And does snow and ice impede the system?
Not so much, spiders actually got give us more.
A bird.
Up around there's a big lens, when you look up, there's like a fisheye lens and there's a globe that gets foggy with dust and things, and you have to go up and clean it off, and there'll be spiders will actually make webs around it, because it's there's a little light in it, it attracts
How does this do
insects.
at night, or are the intersections light enough that it detects things?
Yes, yep, has none of them have any issue with that. It also can see headlights, so, and even if it's somebody walking with it in dark, it can see motion, that something is into the box.
Mhm.
It can detect, if a moved across the road, it would say, oh, it's a person, probably. It wouldn't know for sure, it doesn't have that level of sophistication. Some of the challenges, like I said before, is a turnover, 57% of DPW staff in the last 2 years. And we reduced our number of employees by one position. That was so we could actually hire people, and that was a conscious decision. Challenge, I think, right now is what's gonna happen in the next few years with inflation, with tariffs. We don't know what's gonna happen. One of the good things, though, we have new employees, new attitudes. Everybody's got a smile on their face, except for maybe tomorrow morning. But there's a lot of camaraderie now, a lot of energy. So we have an opportunity to mold a decent group here. So that's something that looking forward to. They're bringing these people along. I just threw this in here as something that we just looked at how the tariffs would affect us if everything that was. When I put the slide together was said, if those go forward the way we talked about, we would see somewhere around 135,000. This is all funds. It's not just general fund, fire and water and wastewater. Water and wastewater probably get the biggest hit, and that's in chemicals. A lot of our chemical costs are the chemicals we don't produce them in the US. I mean, polymers and some of the fluorides and things, we just don't make them. So they're always gonna be, if there's a tariff, we're gonna pay it.
But Ellen, is that about 1% or over 1%?
No, it's a little bit less. Right now with our net assessed value, 1% is about 125,000.
Thank you. No, so this is a little more than.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is more in
But
total.
this-
I was focusing on the general
Right,
fund,
the
since
general
the
fund,
other
okay,
pieces
sorry.
are borne by,
Sorry,
yeah,
Yeah.
so a little bit more in total, but it.
this is the taxpayers can see at 1%.
Correct.
If you think about the last big tariffs were on steel, our big jump in prices were in things made by steel. We didn't see it right off. That's why vehicles went so, I'd like trucks in particular, that's the big bump on those was related to that tariff. And it took a few years for it to catch up, and we're still paying that price for that previous tariff.
So in here, the chemicals are quite obvious, and then the buildings, is that from certain building materials, like steel? or-
Buildings, it's just fuel costs.
Okay,
We assume even though we lock the prices in,
Mhm.
we don't know. If they'll can honor this. I mean, some of the vendors, like, we've stockpiled materials. Fuel is not that way. Fuel is very volatile. And we use Irving for all our fuel.
is that the same for transportation then? Or is
Most
that,
of the fuel in this region comes from Canada. So both transportation and heating. And we don't have natural gas, so that doesn't come from Canada, and most of the materials that those fuels come from foreign. So those transportation buildings basically heat and fuel, it's not other costs, we haven't factored any of those in, because we have no idea how that's gonna play out, because it's a pretty difficult thing, because there's so many pieces that go into it. This is just seat of the pants. We know those things, steel. And those three countries that we know we have big products that we could see that increase.
So great job figuring this out. This is changing by the day. So you mentioned the steel and aluminum, what's 25%?
25%.
That's already in this number?
Yes.
Wow, okay. Okay.
So, well, they're in our steel, they're in our cost for our fleet. We'll have to adjust our CIP numbers, which I haven't done by
Right.
that.
Got it.
We've already seen some of that already, because the current prices are already been adjusted by that amount. So it's not like, what happened is when the tariffs went in, we paid the price. Vendors looked at other countries where they could get funds that weren't covered by the tariffs. Now those countries will be covered by the tariffs, so those prices won't go back down just because that country is not covered. They'll find other sources. So I suspect those are things we're gonna have to continue to look at.
Okay, thank you.
This was more of we could be affected depending on what happens. And it's a guess.
Yeah.
Questions?
We've been asking all along, but any
Yeah.
other questions?
Jeff?
No, yeah, thank you, Pete.
Move on to water or,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, water. Which one you want to do? Water? Sure, we'll do water. Water you want to do next?
See if I have that skill set.
While he's talking, always finding it.
No, wait a minute, hang on.
I was gonna give you some numbers, other things that, so just something that we talked about is, some costs. So I talked about snow removal, just the labor cost is $920 an hour for every hour they pick up snow.
We haven't had this kind of snow in a long
Just so you
time.
know, every time we add more areas, we're adding more hours, and that's just the labor cost. The fuel cost is about $200 an hour. So between the two of them, $1,100 an hour. That doesn't look at our fleet and what it does to our fleet. That just, those are we get paid today costs. If you look at fleet, use the like FEMA numbers for no other, well, the price is actually more like $2,000 an hour. When you take all the capital costs, roll it in, that's what it costs per hour to pick up snow. So when you think about adding areas, just think of actually adding every year. For every hour you add to a pickup, and we have on average 10 pickups a year. So it'll be 10 times that for every hour. So for every hour you add to a pickup, it's 20,000 more than essentially, so 10 to 20,000. I don't know how you look at it.
We have 10 pickups a year.
That's a rough number based on historic. We've had roughly, not last year,
Uh-huh.
not so far this year, but we're halfway through winter, so there's still time.
There's 3 more storms in like
Yes,
a week.
We'll be,
Is that because because it snows more than that though on
so some of the storms we don't have
But
to
we
pick
don't
up
have to
every
pick up.
storm if there's
Yeah.
below a certain size. We
Okay.
can move it to say we have a 3-inch snowstorm.
Uh-huh.
We may be able to move that to the curb. We get 2 3-inch snowstorms. We start to say, okay, maybe this is too much. 3, we definitely, we go.
So the pickup is when we
Actually,
haul
We
it
actually
out,
move it out
take it out,
downtown. and
Get
haul
it
it
out of
public.
put it on Public Works or Oak Hill.
No, we don't take it out. But they wouldn't want that on. the street.
I know, it's too gritty. Too gritty.
So let's go on to water reclamation. That works. So. I'm not gonna go through the detail here on what we do. It's basically cleaning wastewater. Making sure that it's clean and making sure it goes back to the river and we make sure the resources are fairly used and. This is the breakdown. So Kevin, who couldn't make it here tonight, he was sick. Christina oversees him as well as, we interact together quite a bit. So we have an IDP coordinator, Albert Venice, who's relatively.
What's IPP?
Yes, district treatment program. He manages essentially when there is any use that is different than what our wastewater plant is designed. So our plant is designed for domestic flow. Restaurants have higher BOD, TSS, those are just fancy words, but more oxygen demand, more solids.
that your
more-
coat?
Good luck with the road.
more organic. So those it tends to be the restaurants give us a lot of heartache. We spend a lot of time chasing those down. They reasonable plug lines. The BOD in some locations is pretty excessive, which affects our treatment capacity. And part of our upgrade is to remove nitrogen. It's adding nitrogen, so we need to control it so we actually can clean the water before it's discharged. The other big challenge is the emergent chemicals, PFAS, for instance, PFOA, PFOS, and more chemicals every day. They keep coming up with things we have to. Right now, we don't have to remove them, but we have to test for them. We just got a draft, NPDS permit, we actually get it, just before Christmas. It was a Christmas present. It was just wonderful to get it then. We got an extension to, actually this week, and we submitted a 9-page. We request to change some of the requirements, and one big piece of that is additional testing requirements. And the testing requirements can cost us an additional 20 grand a year. That's just the cost for the test. And that doesn't include the staff funding. It's, you gotta collect the sample, you gotta package the sample, you gotta ship the sample. And those are things that, a lot of the things that EPA does when they look at new emergence, chemicals is they have wastewater plants that do the data collection for them. So that's what we're doing. And then essentially making a rope that we will then be hung by. So, we don't have huge issues with some of these chemicals, but we still have to do the testing. So those are things we've asked not to do. And some of the other requirements are aesthetic requirements, like, can you, the best one is, does the wastewater taste differently? I'm not drinking it, and I'm not gonna have a staff drink the wastewater or taste it to see if it tastes different. Compared to, not only that, compared to the river. So you not only have to drink the wastewater, you have to drink the river water. Some of the things that they have in their permit are just ridiculous. So we've asked for those things to be stricken. I know that there was a lawsuit that delayed our permit, at least because of these aesthetic, they're too vague. It's like significant fish kill. It's like, well, define that. Is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 2? What's significant? It depends. What depends who's the regulator. So we want hard and fast numbers. So we've asked for some of those things. So that will affect us going forward. Just touch base before we go. This is a department that will see big turnover in the next few years. A lot of these employees here are long tenured employees. Kevin's been here for 24 years, I believe. Rich has been here for like 18. Dennis has been here 26 or 7. Jason's been here for 10. Riley is the only one that has been here less than 5. I suspect in the next 5 years, there'll be other than Albert and Riley, the other few may not be here. So the next thing is, we can guarantee that. So there's a big knowledge gap we're gonna lose. So that's a big concern, that there'll be some turnover, and it's very difficult to find people in the wastewater field. There's not a lot of training, and it's not one of these glamorous, jobs that people are lining up to do. So it's very difficult, and we have had some success in training people. So that's what we hope to do, is that as people retire, we actually hire people with potential, without the skills, and train them. So there's some things we have to think about: incentives, ways to attract people, and actually we'll put them through classes, and some of them. By the time you finish and you're at a level you can run a plant, it's an associate's degree essentially, and that's pretty difficult to find. It's a lot more difficult to do wastewater treatment than it is water treatment, just because it's way more complicated, way more testing, and way more difficult to clean. Moving on from the folks we have, things that are coming up. We have final design for the project will be done over the next year. We won't bid it for probably about a year from May, of this coming May. We have some other tanks replacement. We have some existing chlorine chemical storage tanks that have to be replaced. We have a pump station wet well cleaning, and that's some of the things that we have to do that it take a little bit more effort. These are kind of more larger things. We won't, once the project starts going, it's going to be all hands on deck, because it's going to be trying to run a plant while it's changing. It's like trying to change your tires when you're driving. It's not easy, and they'll have some challenges over a 2 to 2.5 year time frame. I'm gonna skip sign. I'll skip right through that. We'll have to do some things here. Some additional projects we have to do. We lost our IDP coordinator. He's gone for a few years, and he retired. He actually left to get out of Krell. And his replacement, Albert, is finally caught up to all the permits that we had expired. It took him 2.5 years to finally do that, because there was a lot that needs to be done. But he's caught up with that, so we're moving forward with that. There's a bunch of things that we'll needing to do through our ordinance, once we have our plan updated, and the project's done, we'll have to do a headworks loading, which will change what we can, it won't affect so much the restaurants, but it'll affect, industrial users. And we do have a few of them. And there'll be a bunch of them in, at Dartmouth, but also a lot of the research is actually done in Lebanon. It'll affect them, but they have to manage that piece, but we will be involved with that. So there'll be quite a bit of stuff going on that, and that's something that we're struggling a little bit with Lebanon. They don't have an IDP coordinator. So we're having to try to make sure that we aren't letting them let things slip through their cracks. And there may be some things that we may have to do to help move them along. So there's a little bit of a goal challenge. Our budget's down, and the biggest reason is our capital. Wages go up. Like I said, these are longest serving employees in a group of any of our departments. So without capital, it's a 2.6% increase. With capital, it's an 8% reduction. So that's what the big change is capital. Some of the charges, I won't go through too much detail. The big one here, I put the wastewater study here. We're suggesting that we have a healthy fund balance in the sewer fund, that you could draw the cost of that from the reserve, from the fund balance. In fact, you could fund the second phase as well. We will apply for a grant. We might get 1 year, we might not get either, but we will get. Prefer to get the one from the stormwater, because that doesn't have the healthy fund balance, where this one does.
So that particular cost will not figure into a rate increase. Well, unless we need to replenish the.
If you draw it from fund balance.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, okay.
Big increase in sludge disposal, and part of it is because last year, or this current year, we did a digestive cleaning. So we removed all the sludge, so we didn't have, and we had some covered money, so we were able to reduce the cost. And this year, the tipping fees have gone up significant, and we're anticipating the continued increase. So that's what the big increase is here. Once the new process is running, that's gonna be different. We have no idea what it is. It could be lower, it could be higher. There's all kinds of things we can use our process differently. This in fact may go down, because we can use some of the materials rather than dispose them. We can actually use them in the process to, it has to, just have carbon added, and this is a carbon source. So we may be seeing, with recycling some of the materials, so that could go down. Moving down to the other changes, lab chemicals, that's something we know is gonna go up. That's the increase that we anticipated, not the tariff increases. Those are already anticipated before the tariffs.
Pete, are there competitive vendors for the sludge disposal?
It's where does it go? Right now it's Lebanon landfill. The other choice is the land apply. The problem is the state keeps changing the rules. And they're more expensive still. So that does make us nervous, is if Lebanon, since we can't take sludge anymore, we have to really struggle for an outlet. And the state is actually making it more and more difficult. And the big reason for that is PFAS, because it accumulates in sludge. It's basically the end of wherever if it's in the water and sewer somehow, it's where you concentrate it. And so we're dealing with that level. And the landfill is actually finding that a lot of their PFAS source is not necessarily sludge, but it's accumulated the waste stream, it's accumulated and consolidated there. So we just further that. Our levels are below the levels that would be action levels, so we're still okay. But once you hit a limit in the receiving location, you can't take any more. So that's the problem we're gonna run into, is at some point we may be cut off.
Pete, if there is an increase in PFAS and you guys are able to identify the source, is there a way to recover some of the funds for dealing with the PFAS?
Yeah, that's something we have to think about. We don't have a mechanism at this point in the rates, but it could be something we look at. But they bear the full cost of increased disposal fees. It's good instead of not to do it. So one of the things we have to do is we have some categorical discharges that will be required to do PFAS testing.
Mhm.
And that will be identified sources,
Are those based on like the industry?
the industry types, and those are basically known
Mhm.
industry types that have historically generated the type of materials that would potentially have PFAS. That's part of the IDT program, is to do testing to see if we can find sources of it, so we can reduce or remove it at the source, essentially what the program is intended to do.
Mhm.
So that's ultimately what the solution is, not to charge more for disposals, stop them from doing it in the first place.
Yeah,
And that's something that, we've had actually, one thing I wanna, it's easy to look at. Industries have done poor job, but there's other industries that did a great job. Hyperthin is a good example. Their metals recovery is
Mhm.
phenomenal. When they first were discharging, they were exceeding our copper limit, I think it was. They've done a wonderful job and got their copper levels down below what the background levels are. And they recovered it in their system, because that's part of their goal, and it was something that. We had actually capacity to take it, but they said, no, we want to get below that level. So they're a good steward of their system. Moving along, one of the things, electrical costs have gone down, because that's the PPA allocation. Is now set up there by we have a group net metering system where we have 3 locations that are taking the off takers for the second array. That's the larger array. And it's water reclamation, our library, and RW Black. So it takes 60% of the generation go to the wastewater facility. So that's reduced their bill, because the charge for that it's cheaper than the utility rate. So the nice thing too is we don't have to stay on the utility rate. We can move our energies that we need to purchase to any broker. Right now we're at CPCNH, which is cheaper. Machinery increase, that was a broken camera for us actually videoing the lines that we have one that failed. The other costs are capital expenses. The backhoe, we have one backhoe being replaced by highway, the second one that's shared costs by water and wastewater. Moving on, this is with six staff members. We've had interns that we've used through grants. And we will probably have another year of that. We'll see if we can get more. We get grant monies to do some of the testing, or some of the sampling, or some of the analysis for us.
So just on that, it looks like you said current staffing level 6 FTEs, 9. I didn't quite understand.
So the 9, this is a little bit complicated because they're paid for. We have 2 of the people in utility, and the utility crew are actually paid for by wastewater, because they deal with a portion of the utilities crew responsibility as a collection system, as well as salaries for Christina's, half of her salary is paid for out of that. So the math is kind of swirly, but
Okay,
it comes up to that. That's what that comes up to.
okay. Yep, all right, thanks.
I knew that was gonna be a question, because I scratched my head when what? Explained it made a lot more sense. So these are the capital costs of study, and about half the cost of the backhoe. And these are the things we're gonna be faced with. I talked about them, raising costs, construction project. That's probably gonna have the biggest cost, biggest impact on us, is dealing with a contractor. Although it won't be. Yeah, it'll be next fiscal year. They'll be starting to see it, beginning of it. The following 2.5 years will be they'll be in the middle of it.
Is that that's the last one? Should rates be raised in anticipation of the?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a question that we haven't run the analysis on. What we know, that when it comes time to pay the loan off, there's gonna be a bump in cost. Question of, should we bump our rates up so that when it comes time, it won't be such a big increase? One of the issues is that we have a very healthy fund balance. Should we move some of that fund balance into either, you could say, rate reduction, but that's going to count it the other way, or do we have more studies that we can use to draw that down? And that's the biggest problem, is that is growing because our recapture fee isn't automatically put into reserves. It goes into fund balance. So if we have a large development, say DHNC put an addition, the recapture fee was about $120,000. That went to the fund balance. Rather than to the reserves or to reduce rates, so that's a question of. Do we take those monies and put into reserve in the following years? Not unlike we do the exchange tax, land
Right,
use
land
exchange
use,
tax,
yeah.
that sort of thing.
Why wouldn't we be putting those in the
It's not a
reserves?
consistent number, it's all over the place, so one year it might be 50,000, next year maybe 200,000, the following year maybe 5,000. So it'd be.
But if we have this huge, like looming
So one of
thing that
the
we're gonna have to bond
issues,
for or
Joe,
whatever.
matters, we have to, if we put it in reserves, we have to actually have a cost in that reserve. So if we said, we
Okay.
are going to use a portion of that money, we did this in one of the previous upgrades. We put the money into reserve and we say, we're gonna pay the construction loan cost. There's an interim loan cost.
Mhm.
We'll draw that out of reserves, so our rates, the amount of money we borrow won't have to be so high. We could do that. So that we'd be going into the reserve, and then we would pay less of the full loan cost. So that is something we could do. It would save us money in the long term.
But right now, it's just sitting in fund balance.
It's just sitting in fund balance, which is what? Employee,
It's over $2 million.
yeah, it's over 2 million for a $3.5 million budget. It's.
Christina, you had a question?
Make that go just to reserve. You know.
As long as you have something to draw from the reserve. If you said, we're gonna raise the rates so
But
that we don't.
what about, like, we have $22 million budget. Knowing that, so we don't have to fund that first year.
Right, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Is so that we can raise the rate. But take the rate raise and put it into reserve, and then draw that out to reduce the upfront cost, then the loan cost will be less. We can do that. We've done that in the past.
We'll look into what our options.
Okay, you'll come to us with a recommendation. Yes, okay.
It's a piece of the municipal accounting that I'm
It's
continuing to
pretty
get up to speed on.
complicated when we did it the last time. I remember it was something that we had to, it was pretty complicated. At the end, it was basically a draw from reserve. And rather than only $22 million when you draw, say, 2 million. It's now $20 million you're paying back. That's.
I mean, at the very least, I think the select board could choose to use fund balance to defray the impact of the ongoing debt payments. So because it's held within the enterprise fund. And so.
Right, and you could do that. Another option would be not to raise the rates. To do that is use the fund balance to, when the rates come due, is to keep the rates from having to increase as much, so you can build it up over time. So there's a bunch of different options there, but
We could buy the rates, keep the rates.
yeah, and while you're slowly raising it, you don't see that big jump all at once.
Thank you. Yes, Nancy.
So you folks, you and your staff did the tariffs scenario. This is a really naughty question. Have you thought about the federal EPA going out of existence or being really scaled back, and how would that affect, for instance, all of your testing and reporting and so forth?
So we've thought of that. Like, we better drag our feet long enough.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, state of New Hampshire also has regulations we have to follow. We would not be able to just turn the lights off, the waste plant, we still have to treat waste.
And
We may not have the testing that the permit requires, but the way the state law is, there's a thing called anti-backsliding. So once we have the requirements, you can't go backwards. Even if the rules relax, you still have to meet that standard.
So New Hampshire takes precedent over federal?
No, New Hampshire is more restrictive,
Yeah,
more restrictive applies.
okay.
At the end of the day, the Connecticut River is the drinking water supply for a lot of downstream users,
right.
and we have an obligation.
And it's also a resource of people swimming and boating and. Some of the things that we talk about is some of the additional testing requirements, and the additional, like removal of nitrogen. When we remove our nitrogen down to the levels that we've been told we need to, Downstream will not be able to measure that we did anything, because it's so small compared to the whole load. But we are something that they can regulate. They can't regulate the farm fields, they can't regulate the woods. But we are adding materials, so that's part of, they have rules to prevent us from doing that, so.
So they regulate the pinpoint, but they can't do the
Point
runoff.
sources, they can regulate, they
okay.
can't. Well, they can in a different way, it's called MS4, which we don't want to be. Then we would have
Not
to
that kind
have some
of
more
town, yeah.
rules and regulations, and it becomes much more complicated for not just wastewater, but add stormwater to that.
Got it.
So
But for
that,
some pollutants, we can maybe increase the rate if someone is going to pollute.
yes, I mean,
So-
we can say you can't discharge it first. No, you can't discharge, period. We can cut you off. Or we can say, okay, while you work on a system so that you can discharge it, we're gonna charge you more. Assuming, as long as you agree, this is kind of like the state does to communities, they call it consent decrees. As long as you're gonna do something, we will allow you not to meet the rules. But you don't follow the agreed timeline, you'll be fined. And that's the same sort of thing you do to an industry if you had to.
Water?
Bear with me.
Tariffs on aluminum and steel just went through. 25% all foreign. Aluminum and steel.
It might not be the same tomorrow.
It's the other things
The
that.
order was
chemicals
signed
and
20 minutes
fuels.
ago.
Yeah,
Executive order or bill?
I don't know what's going on here. Hang on.
Official proclamations.
Oh, good, it's a new term.
25%
No,
tariff on
it's
steel and aluminum from all countries globally.
We're gonna be an island unto ourselves. Guess he wasn't paying attention to the commercials. Love, choose love.
Pretty sure I downloaded it. It's not showing up, so. There it is.
it's fine, I have to break down and use readers, I keep getting closer and closer and it's not working. Making it bigger and bigger and bigger. One word on the screen.
Little tiny laptops
It's time. I refuse it, it's been like 3 years and I'm like squinting and it's like, no.
What really is bothersome though is when you go into the store and you're like, okay, they said to get 200 milligrams and I'm like, what? That just looks like dust. Okay, I can't do it. I'm like, it's dusty. I should really clean these drugs.
So,
What's up?
all right, let's move in. All right, so essentially make clean drinking water and get it to people, just a summary, so we don't have to go through that. We also spend time, trying to educate people on like, trying to make sure you use water wisely and not waste it and look at ways of, making sure it can be safe. So these are, whoops, our staff, so this is a treatment facility essentially. The cost in the distribution system is actually in our utility budget and so we already covered that. So this is just we'll cover just the treatment process. So we have two folks here, Dylan and Wyatt. Wyatt's brother was here, Wesley. Like, it could have been just different enough names that they would have been easier to remember. I still call him Wyatt half the time, so. And now I said, Wesley Wyatt was in this one, I call him Wesley, so. It's equal opportunity. In my defense, I call my kids by the cat's name, so. It's like, I don't get it right anywhere. So this is a pretty simple mission. We want clean, safe drinking water. And reliable, so that's the piece of fixing pipes. So one thing we've got to do, and this is something that's been on the list to do since 2010 is actually adopt a water ordinance. We don't actually have a water ordinance. So we've been working off the Hanover Waterworks Company PUC approved regulations, which they're outdated.
No,
So
Hanover
we need to
Water
adopt,
Company.
we have that draft one. Every time we get close to ready to adopt it, something comes up and it gets like low priority. The one little thing we have, one thing we have to address is the lead and copper rules, and we may have to modify the ordinance a little bit, but by and large, it's ready to go. We just have to find the time to bring it to the board. So obviously maintain things. We have some chemical storage that we need to upgrade. We have some areas we don't have adequate storage, so it's been stored out in the treatment floor. Acids and base in proximity, like cats and dogs, which not safe. So we need to get those in containment. They actually do spend, anytime there's a water break, the two guys at the water treatment plant will show up to help fix it too. So there are resources for that as well. Then out in the day-to-day things, if there's an emergency, they're hands-on. And they're pretty good about doing that. So this year there will be there's a memo that Christina just sent to Rob about the bid, the water distribution project. We're going to recommend an award to L&M. But there's something will be brought to the board in a future meeting. Work will start this spring. It'll cover a bunch of areas. I won't go into detail right now, but it'll be the next year and a half to 2 years of distribution improvements, and it'll disrupt both the utility piece, the on the ground in the field, but also some of the treatment process might have some effects. So there's some other things we have to do. We have another water storage tank we have to clean, paint. We did one, we sandblasted and painted last year. We have another one to do. We're about a little bit more than a third through the meter replacement program. We figured about 500 years about what we can do. That's trying to fit time in between all the projects. And it's pretty time consuming. You have to go into someone's house and pull the meter out and set up the cellular hotspot, and it takes a bit of time. So it's on our goal. Upgrading the pumps to the pump station. We have one pump station that's separate from the treatment plant. There's an interconnection project with Lebanon that's actually started. If you go up by the north entrance, you can see an excavator sitting on the side of the road and in the bushes in the snow. That's the pump station that actually is where we provide emergency water to Lebanon, particularly DHMC. The pump station will be right there, and our hydraulic grade line is like 100 feet lower, so they're going to pump it from our system. So that's going to be done this year. And then some training for some of the new regulations that we have to adopt.
Peter, since we're on TV and Christina, the meter replacement.
Yes.
Anyone who's on town water, I guess both, can go to the website and schedule a meter replacement.
Yes.
And about where are you in that total process? If you're doing 500 a year, how many would you have? And you have how many in total?
1,900.
1,900.
So there's a few that don't have water, but they're not municipal water, but they're on municipal sewer.
Oh,
They're
interesting.
part of that number.
But so,
Yes.
to the viewing
Thanks.
public, just go to the website and sign up or call Leah and say,
Yeah, want to come in, set up a time, we can come in and change your meter. And the nice thing about it, each meter change, you can see how much water you use. You can set it up so if you have a leak, it'll warn you. So it's something you can monitor yourself, and you can see how much water you use on a daily basis.
and if
That's
your
another-
kid is taking a really long shower, you can say, hey,
Yeah,
not so much water.
Well, we don't have those. Some meters are set that they actually have a solenoid valve. They can shut water off. We didn't buy those. So if people didn't pay their bill. Some communities will shut the water off.
The handle right next to it.
So the best thing is turn the hot water off.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, trust me.
That usually gets people out of character.
Pete, on the interconnect with Lebanon, does that go both ways?
Yeah, so if we actually used it when we painted the tank, we were fed water from Lebanon for the one zone, which is called the Greensboro Road Zone. So there's a pump station right on top of Sand Hill before you get to Greensboro Road. From there, south at Greensboro Road and Great Hollow, those are all on that high pressure zone. But they were backfed from Lebanon for that, 4 months, was it roughly?
Yeah.
Roughly 4 months,
May.
August, yeah, so.
Yeah.
So we can go, and that was the intent, and it's partially funded by DES, the HMC, some money from the city of Lebanon, and we provided money for the pressure.
I don't know.
Hey, Lebanon provided labor and, yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they applied for the grant.
yes. We provided money for the pressure reducing valve. And so, which we have one there already that we use, and a new one in a building. Now we know it's gonna be maintained. And so it's something that can go either direction. We don't have the same thing on the other end down in Route 10. There was a valve between them, but there's no way of regulating pressure, so it's a dangerous situation down there. Because the pressure down there is about 100 PSI. And you'd add 25 PSI, and you'd be breaking pipes in the old pipes, so. That's something that we hopefully won't have to use.
Thank you.
Going to just kind of the budget overview, budgets, salaries, the amount up overall. About 3%, without the CIP. And that's, wages is a big piece, that's just an increase in wages. And then operations is not a lot up, there's a few things in there, I'll go through that a little bit, lead into some of the detail. We were down 11% last year, and that had a lot to do with capital. And then we bumped back up, so I showed the difference with capital, without capital. So without capital, it's 3%, with capital, it's like 19% increase. It's just more cost. Just hit some of the highlights here, salaries. We have a couple of things we're doing that are new. Let's see. Relatively small numbers for some of these things. We put them in there just because they're things that change by a higher percent. We have the ability to the meter cellular charges has to do with the water meters, but there's another device we're using that for doing GPSing and for keeping GIS maps up to date. There's a local state had a transmitter that is down. It'll be down for several more years, so to get the resolution, we've had to install something. We'll have a device that will actually give us a higher resolution. Another thing we're doing is it comes in a little further on. I'll touch on. One thing that's happening here, and it's something I did it last year. We'll do it again this year. Is the fire fund charge? We've been slowly reducing it to match the capital, the payment of taxes. So when the private water company was municipalized, it was paying taxes on the distribution system in the land. So the land essentially stayed in current use. It wasn't a whole lot of money. It was really the distribution system. So you can't, as a municipal fund, you wouldn't be taxed, but it was going to be a big hit in the tax rate. So there's a payment that the water fund pays to the general fund, but the water fund charges the fire fund hydrant charge, which doesn't really represent the cost of hydrants. It was based in PUC rules to how they came up with their cash flow. So it doesn't really reflect what the real costs are. So what we recommended several years ago is to slowly reduce the charge that we pay back to, or what we charge the fire fund over time, till we meet the water payment of taxes, and then the town can decide. You merge the fire fund and eliminate both payment of taxes and the charge, because it's a wash. So that's what that represents, is the plan to be able to do that in another 3 years. We paid off another 4 years. You'll be able to just merge them into one at one tax rate potentially, and you eliminate that payment of taxes.
That seems reasonable.
We have a little bit more expensive for a contracted service. Right now we have reservoir monitoring. We have to physically go to a reservoir to see how much water's in it. We're looking at putting in remote cellular devices that we can tell. They'll send out a signal that tells us what the water level is, so we can actually track the level of the reservoirs. Let's see. Capital, I'll go through the capital, when we get to the capital slide. Charges to reserve go up based on the payoff, and then debt service, we put in there that just to show you that the debt service in the principal and interest are slowly going down. And eventually they'll be paid off in 2028. Around the same time as 2029 is when we'll start paying the bond off for the project that we're gonna start physically doing this spring. It was basically a wash. And also in that, around that same time frame, we have another loan we paid off, and the hope is to do another project, another infrastructure project. We had identified, I don't know, it was way more, there's more projects than we have money for in the future. But we had broken it down into like 10 different areas, 10 or. But we target, we're hoping to do 6, I think we can get 4.
Oh, yeah.
So we will actually have, in the next couple of years, we bring forward to the capital improvement plan committee, the next phase of projects that will replace watering. And that's part of the idea, to continue to make those replacements using the bonding capacity, so that we'll continue to make improvements. The plan is like a 40-year plan. By the time you get to the end of the 40 years, the things we put in 20 years ago will be 60 years old, and you'll start replacing them. So the plan should continue to perpetuate, so that it'll be pretty stable over time, as long as you don't change the rules, as long as you don't change things. The treatment process doesn't change, and we have a pretty good aggressive replacement of our treatment process. So our membranes are replaced on a regular basis, so we don't have the big hiccups or big costs like you would otherwise.
Thank you for smoothing that. And Ellen, is there a debt schedule that we'll get as part of our, yeah, okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Just going through the personnel costs, you can see the same thing here. There's 4, 2 in utilities, 2 in treatment, and then half one is Christina, so that's 4.5. Then 1 intern, which is grant funded currently. Once we either expend a grant or we find another grant, we'd have more interns. But once we expend the grant, we would not be asking for money unless we may find out that some of those projects, study projects like sewer, water, sewer collection study or water collection, we may be able to do something with the interns to actually reduce some of those costs or actually get more done. So we'll look at that as part of that project. You can see the wages and benefits. Moving on to capital expenses, and I don't know why those didn't show up, because I had a really cool slide.
Do it again.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hey.
Look at that.
Filled in.
I made the icons, try to match, and they don't have any good icons, but ball chill painting, Greensboro pump station. I couldn't find a pump, so I had something to lift. And then half the cost of the backhoe loader, which was also in the wastewater on the capital expenses.
$500,000, I tell you.
I
I assume it's more than
It's,
painting.
you have to strip it down to bare metal. Both inside and out, and
That
it's
inside
epoxy
part,
paint,
that'd be a
it's
sucky job.
pretty elaborate. And there's lead on the outside, so it has to be tinted, and there's hazardous materials disposal. It's not just simple spray that. We've had people graffiti tanks, it'd be a lot cheaper than that. But it's a lot more expensive than, hopefully, this will, so it's a 20-year cycle with painting. We won't have to do a stripping of the paint next time. It'll be more of a touch-up, because this one here is really, this lead, it's on the exterior fortunately, but we want to get lead away from the system. So we will see that drop off, but there's still, the interior will get painted. And you can usually do spot painting.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Save a lot of money.
A new one would be even more, add a 0 or 2.
It would be probably
What kind of
3
paint?
million.
What kind of epoxy?
Oh, it's an epoxy base, so it's really hard, and it's underwater, so it's gonna be, it's not so much underwater, it's the where the water goes up and down that area, it's gonna be really, and it's a pretty thick coat, and it's multiple layers, and it's a pretty sophisticated system. Here's just the water fund. I wanted to show you the impacts of tariffs. Saw that before. This is just showing this particular fund what there would be. And it's really chemicals. Wastewater fund's not as affected right off, because the vendor has already bought half the years through the end of this calendar year, has all but they said they don't have the ability to keep those funds, those rates going forward, so. Their effects will be less.
Chemicals again would be the
Chemicals are the
yeah,
big driver.
big thing. Yeah, okay.
Questions?
Questions? I know we asked questions along the way. Any additional questions? No.
These guys are here for, oh, I know my question. You have two people in the, I mean, two staffers, right? In the water.
Yes, two staffers.
And when they're on, talk to us about being on call. I mean, are you guys, are they on call?
So they're on
24/7?
call every other week, so
Okay.
1 week one's on, 1 week the other one's on. One thing we're trying to do is get our utility crew, the problem will be, it'll take years. To get to them to the point where they could actually step in and perhaps be in that rotation. It does change the dynamics because you really have to be dedicated to that facility to actually be efficient at it. And it takes away from utility operations and meter replacement and one thing we've done in the past, and once we've done with a water project, we did last year. We placed sections of water main in-house. We replaced the water main on College Street with town staff. We placed the water main on Summer Street with town staff, completely town staff. We rented some equipment, but it's way cheaper. We have part of our CIP program for the water utility is to be able to do those sort of projects. So we want to make sure we keep that crew of distribution and collection crew relatively focused on that. So they really can't be so much on the treatment process. The big issue I have is that if something happens, and this was a case of COVID, we made sure only one person at a time. Because I didn't want to get both of them sick and then we have nobody running a treatment plant. And we had that same thing with wastewater and highways. We had to break crews apart, and that's always a concern I have, is that we may have to make sure that we have somebody who can step in. And having at least the basic knowledge to know how to like fill day tanks and collect data. Might have to sub out some of the work, like some of the testing piece, if we had a problem where both operators are out. But the intent is to have more staff who can do some of those things, so that we have some coverage.
Thanks. Thank you. It's a lot.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate it. Yes, Jack. Thank you.
They did all the work behind the scenes. It's made it easy.
All right. We will move on to the town manager's monthly report.
Good luck with the snow.
Yes.
Is it coming tonight or Thursday?
Thursday.
Snow removal.
Yeah,
Oh, snow removal. And then snow. On Thursday night. Okay.
I don't know what's the water.
I know Christina would be, because I had to take her back to her car.
It's called forced attendance. Still running.
Extend it out.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right,
guys.
thank you.
Yeah, during the day Thursday.
Bear with me a moment. I'm paperless tonight, so I'm moving to the. Okay. So I'll be fairly brief on the town manager report. It's in writing and on the website. Fire department's fully staffed. Training's underway. AMT level certification refresher course was completed. They're planning a paramedic refresher course coming up, and both courses are offered to adjacent communities also. They're conducting a live fire training drill, as you are aware, on March 6th is the scheduled date. They will be burning a house in real time, and it'll be an opportunity to work with our other fire departments, our mutual aid departments in real time to experience a live fire. It's a rare opportunity, and they're grateful to have this by Christ Redeemer Church. And that they're looking forward to the training opportunity. Planning and zoning and codes, 3 vacancies. I will say that we are conducting final rounds of interviews tomorrow for the sustainability coordinator. My hope is we have an offer by next week. Rental housing is a little slow, and we are trying to coordinate a interview for a planning director interview. So we're moving forward on all 3 fronts, hoping to have some more candidates for the rental housing inspector. Public Works, they're fully staffed. They're working on training. Actually, they did have a resignation, so the utility crew is missing an individual. Training, they're going to operate our CDL license training, as Pete noted in his presentation, and that'll actually reduce some of our costs because we typically send people away for this. We're partnering with Claremont on this, and this is an exciting opportunity to do in-house. They'll also be doing fire department training for CDL. Projects and programs, Pete's talked about winter response and water system replacement and utility maintenance. Just note that there's some maintenance issues at wastewater or water reclamation. The methane boiler outage is under repair. Water meter replacements at 38% complete. Pete noted the wastewater permit renewal comment period, and his comments are out. We did select board at the last meeting endorse the CPC&H program that was put forward. That information is here and on our website. Police staffing, exciting news. The police department will be fully staffed. We do have 2 officers going to the academy in the spring, but we will bring us to a full staff minus the police chief vacancy for the first time in almost a decade. Communications division is down 2 staff. They're working on a job fair outreach in March. And they conducted some education outreach with attended the downtown business group to talk about the parking with the downtown parking group. So that's working. We're working forward on that. They worked on a senior scam cybersecurity presentation at Kendall with 70 participants. We actually got a note from Kendall thanking them for presenting. It was well received and appreciated. And they're working on a presentation with a safety briefing and Q&A with the fire department at this time with Chief Gilbert. CLEA is in their 2nd year of accreditation. And they're working on an active shooter exercise with Dartmouth College and Dartmouth Safety and Security and Emergency Management and Hanover Fire Department in July, and they're meeting monthly to work through this. At the library, scheduling is underway. Popular performers will be returning with new additions, partnering with Parks and Rec and the Conservation Commission, Hanover Conservancy, excuse me, seeking more local sponsors. They're looking at adding movie nights at the library, first Fridays, family-friendly films and popcorn and drink. Fire detection system is in, and their newsletter is linked. And that concludes my formal town manager report.
You know, we have a community theater that's film theater that's struggling. So maybe encourage our Edna and Howe libraries to have movie nights there since it's a theater already and promoting it. So, I mean, it just might be a good collab opportunity and help downtown, get families downtown. And
Excellent suggestion.
Rob, I just want to commend all those involved, including yourself on the hiring. I mean, the great news out of police and DPW, and I think back to, not that many months ago where we had a lot of holes. So terrific for all the efforts across the board to get that done. That's fantastic.
Thanks. I do have an ad that I put out today. That we can either discuss now or under other business, which was the tax increment finance district conversation. I sent out an email with an attachment, and in your front of you is actually a copy of the memo I sent. And I realized this is what I'll refer to in football parlance as Hail Mary. Yeah, but you know, there are several things coming together, a confluence of activities that want me to bring this to your attention. We're about to undertake a revale, which would reset the benchmark for the baseline for tax value. And the opportunity to set that baseline now would benefit the tax increment finance district. The second is they're teeing up, there are several projects being teed up in the corridor that we could benefit from. Both the college and private developers are queuing up, and we expect to see another project in the pipeline as soon as June for permitting, and a third one not too long after that. So the opportunity to set the benchmark, establish the baseline assessed value, and to work forward from there to create fully vetted plan using the committee structure that's established by statute, and then present that plan to the select board and to the community, ultimately to a second town meeting to endorse the final design and the bonding, would allow us to move forward with a project. And the third element of this would be, I skipped over it, would be to secure a partial contribution directly from Dartmouth College. Because, and I want to frame this with the understanding that with all the development going on in the corridor, we will be responsible for upgrading the public portion of that infrastructure. Outside of those directly related to projects, there needs, I try to explain it this way, there needs to be a rational nexus between the offsite improvements to the project itself. You can't say, okay, developer X, you have to rebuild the whole corridor. It has to be proportional to the project, and it has to be directly linked to the project. So we can look at this in a way that we can patch and piecemeal it, or we can take a proactive visionary approach and think beyond what we currently have there, but also acknowledge that Dartmouth will be having an impact on the north side directly, on both sides, but on the north side for specifically, and the opportunity for them to participate and support improvements that would help their residential base also is there. And that's an ask that I'm planning to put forward. Actually have framed it already and met with some of their officials. So with that in mind, I've outlined a schedule. The schedule is tight. Burden is on staff to pull this off. With your thumbs up, I'll continue to proceed down this path to have something for consideration as soon as possible, so that we can get a warrant, have the plan drafted, and frame it in such a way that there's 2 bites at the apple at least. This isn't adopting what's going to be built, but this is adopting the framework and a concept of what could be built. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm just bringing it to your attention to see if I've missed anything. I know it's fast and furious, but I should say that I've spoken with John Dolan, the chair of the CIPC, to let him know that while this is coming out of left field, right after they finished the CIP, here's the background and reason for my recommendation. He did not object to this approach.
Do you need a motion for us to endorse this, or is this just?
I'm gonna step away as a Dartmouth employee that works on this kind of stuff, so I'm gonna recuse myself from discussion.
Just right there. Yeah. Don't go too far.
Yeah, I think just, proceed. If you give staff the direction to proceed, I mean, you'll have the opportunity to say yes or no down the line. Ultimately you have to approve the warrant language. And if you say, no, we're not putting this on the warrant, then we're done.
Yeah, I don't think this is out of left field, because we've been talking about this, or we were talking about this on the planning board a long time ago, when we were talking about underground power lines and other improvements on West Wheelock. And I think the transfers of real estate and plans for improvement there only strengthen that. The reasoning behind it. So, yeah, I would support endorsing this plan.
And I do want to mention one last element, that there is an opportunity to look at it more holistically and perhaps include South Main Street if it meets the threshold for criteria. And that would give us an opportunity to fund both in a TIF.
And when you say South Main Street,
From Wheelock to Maple or beyond Maple,
okay,
the sidewalk.
sidewalks.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money and
Yeah.
we don't know how we're gonna pay for it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I fully support your proposal.
So in my mind, this is at least partially a mathematical question. I mean, there are alternatives. The work could go forward and we would just put the money out up front, and then we would obtain taxes from the properties over time. So I mean, I wonder if there isn't a way to think through the alternatives. I mean, it's kind of, you can do cash flows different ways. You can put the money we can put the money out up front. We can put in a tax increment finance district. So just like to sort of see how that works. And I think, Rob, you've indicated in the past, and I think it's worth reiterating, and I'm not sure that I fully understand it, that there is a lot of, that the select board would have a lot of controls and could dictate almost like switches going. Can you
Sure.
expand on that?
First, the statute requires the select board to appoint an advisory committee. The advisory committee does have a ownership requirement to a portion of it. But that advisory committee reports to the select board. The second is the select board has the ability, or the plan itself, which we will be trying to develop in the very near term, can allow you to turn the dials on whether 100% goes to the TIF or increase in assessed value or tax rate, or a proportionate share goes to the school district in the town to help offset, the removal of that to the general fund. But then we do the calcs to see what debt service it could support if we were going to use debt service, and then figure out how we approach it that way. So there are mechanisms in place that we can use. I can say that the assessing department is doing a build out analysis right now at 25% and at 50% of the corridor, assuming certain build out windows of 4 and 10 years. And we'll see what that revenue stream looks like from a tax perspective. So that we're trying to look at it and have that information to you as soon as we can get it. The key here, I think, is the understanding that if we get a warrant article adopted, it doesn't commit us to a project, and that you'll have the opportunity to figure out how you want to approach that project down the line. But it does set the baseline of the increase in assessed value to fund the TIF if we choose to use it that way.
When you say 25% and 50%, you're talking about the current valuation versus the ultimate valuation. So
Making the assumption that 25% of the corridor will be reconstructed to the standards as allowed in the zoning.
I see.
And that the gross increase in value based on current value versus build out. That's what we're analyzing right now.
Got it. Okay.
I'm gonna echo what Jarrett said, like, I don't find this really out of left field, given that it has been in so many discussions previously. And I really like taking a comprehensive approach. There are so many moving parts that impact different departments, different stakeholders, and I think the only way to design something that's really going to serve as many community members as possible is to take this type of comprehensive approach. It seems like a really great opportunity to at least start the process.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while.
So I'll move forward post haste and try to get something to you in the near term.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. Set?
Next on your agenda is the Bressett Fund. As you may recall, at our last meeting, it was reported that we have approximately 130,000 of 2025 Bressett Fund appropriation to expend. I proposed, I've outlined in this memo, use the Bressett Fund in 3 ways. One is they start the digitization of town land use planning records and link it to our GIS system so that it's available 24/7 to all users. I think it enables access and improves transparency, aligns with the select board OKRs, and creates accessibility and user-friendly interface. I think I'm projecting right now that it's a 2.5 to 3 year commitment. This is the first tranche in this 3-year cycle, if you will. I have a consultant coming in, the firm that's doing the police records in the next week or so to give us a firmer number, but I would like to commit 100,000, and I believe that it's multiple hundreds of thousands to get the basement done, especially the flat files. What I can say is those records downstairs have been culled by our planning department so that they only include those items that must be contained within the Records Retention Act of the state of New Hampshire and the planning department's record retention policy. So we're not scanning miscellaneous documents or notes or anything that isn't needed. It's the official records of the town.
I had a question about we use like Access GIS. Is this going to be
No, it's going to be our GIS.
And is there a way that the tables are also downloadable from the Access GIS? Like the data?
Maybe we
Well, we
can
could talk.
talk about this.
All right, that's what
Sure.
I was curious about that.
The answer
Because it's
is-
like different than the Esri system.
The answer is staff has the ability to download all the data
Mhm.
and under data requests structured, we can provide you with the access to download
Mhm.
certain clip data. So we can give you access if it's specific. We try not to give away the data because we paid for it. So that somebody else doesn't use it to sell or market items that we paid for. So the second project is a history walk. This is a relatively straightforward project. I envision something akin to the J. Barrett History of Downtown book that allows people to view and hear the history, how the buildings have changed. This building, for example, the old pictures of the fire station, the celebration of the fire trucks out front, and then to see it today, the buildings that burn downtown, not that that's what we want to highlight.
Murders.
But a history walk is something that would be easy to launch and pull off, and I think not much different than what we saw this winter for Celebrate the Seasons that Parks and Rec did. And the third is downtown wayfinding and parking accessibility. Yeah, again, I'm looking to fund a portion of the project this year and then a portion for next year. And the idea here is that we have an opportunity to make it easier for guests and visitors and users of the downtown to move around on foot, on bike, on microtransit, and in a vehicle, and find parking where appropriate. Those are my 3 recommendations. If the board endorses them, I'll bring them to the trustees of the trust fund, or we can present them next meeting to the trustee rep.
I think wayfinding is like a great idea so that people can find their way. If we go down that road, I'd love it to include some related sign work for like clarity and safety and to match the operations of our road, and some more considerations of people walking and biking. And I can send you just a list that we've been accumulating.
So, I mean, I think wayfinding is really important. I don't think that's enough money to, it might be enough money for planning for wayfinding, but in terms of implementing signage that is consistent and attractive and durable, I don't think it's enough. So I just, maybe it's a two-part grant.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of the historic walk, I think that sounds great. The signs that are out there, that are still out there for the holiday historic tour, which are attached to our light posts. But it's dated. And so again, I don't think that's enough money to do something thorough and with durability. So I just want to make sure that, I mean, I endorse both of the projects, but I just think that's probably enough money to do the planning and design, but not implementation. But you guys may have some amazing people that will donate work. But I do think that if we're going to do something, I think we need to do it right. And I think it needs to be not necessarily, unless it's a short term, like a 1 month.
Walk, in real life or virtual?
The intent would be to bring people into the community so they can walk around and experience downtown, but also see the history. So it'd be.
Just like how they access it.
It would be both real and virtual.
Okay.
So QR code.
So like finding Pokemon, but finding history of downtown Hanover. Exciting. Maybe we'll merge it with the Pokemon app. Fun for the entire family.
My only two comments is I agree, the budget seemed low, but I love the ideas. To counter that, the first bullet is like squarely in the development of these large language models and what AI is doing right now, and taking these paper documents and turning them into data that's searchable. And so I actually wonder if there's way too much in the first one and not enough in the later, because I think what we're going to see, what we have seen in the last just couple months, and what we're going to continue to see in the next year or two, is that the ability to do that is going to get way cheaper.
We can certainly have that conversation with the vendors or
There's actually a guy that started a company, went to MIT, that it's a really interesting business case, but he is doing this.
Okay.
And he's working with the city of Dallas right now to take all of their data and digitize it. And I'll connect you with him, but
I'd love to speak with him. All I can say is that I sort of have this sort of box that I need to keep everything in.
Sure.
In the sense that the state of New Hampshire has some arcane rules. And until 2018, we weren't allowed to store records digitally. And in order to store it digitally, it must be in PDF-A form or archive form, must be retrievable in real time or within 5 business days, and it must be available to all. So if I can achieve that, I'm happy.
Nancy.
So Kate Anderson gave a really great presentation at the planning board about the college's project for wayfinding around campus and so forth. And I was giving me a smile. So I was wondering whether or not we could, if David is taking technology or anything, or even the printing of signs, anything like that, if we could kind of be partners with the college, so that perhaps even something as simple as uniformity in calligraphy and such, colors and such, that we might be able to integrate our projects.
Love that idea.
Yeah, we can certainly talk to Dave. I know that their project is a different scale.
Yes.
It's a different cost. And I know that part of their process, if the zoning passes, would be sitting before the planning board and making a presentation of the overall master plan for wayfinding. So we could certainly talk to Dave and his team. I'm familiar with them. I've met with them briefly in the field. So, duly noted. The opportunity here, however, is to launch a project, and then we do have another round of Bressett funds that will be for 2026, about 230,000-ish. And we could use some of those funds to support the gap in my estimates.
Well, and you know, if it's the right price. I just am a little worried that it's
Oh,
not quite.
I shouldn't be so conservative. Thank you.
Sounds like you have broad support. It sounds like there are questions about the, you know, scope and the dollars, but that will evolve over time. But I think you need explicit permission or
There is a motion in my memo.
Yep. Okay. Memo.
In the beginning.
Where?
It's unnumbered
memo?
page.
I move to authorize the town manager to use the Bressett funds for the following projects. Digitizing land use files and integrations with GIS, history walk, downtown wayfinding and public parking accessibility.
Second.
Okay. Further comments, questions? No, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous? Jenny? Yes, yep, okay, great, okay, thank you. Okay, let's go on to business recurring action. We have actually already done that. Bressett Fund recommendation by staff completed. Approval of January 27, 2025 select board minutes. Are there any amendments that any select board members would like to make to the minutes of January 27?
The only one was, there was a name that was missing, but I believe it was corrected in this.
On page 3,
It's a couple.
Dartmouth
Yes.
government
Yep.
liaison.
Yep, that's the one.
That's on page 3.
I don't remember.
Well, we
His
may have
name.
to leave them blank.
It's actually in front of you.
Yeah, it's in the
Oh,
paper
okay.
copy. It was
Okay.
included.
It's included.
It is,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
it is on this one.
terrific.
So I will
So-
move to approve the minutes of the printed version of the minutes of the 27 January 2025 select board meeting.
Second? Joanna, all those in favor, or are there any further comments? See Jenny looking through.
Yeah.
Good to go. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. approval of-
That comment about the dark. Freshman. I mean, we are way east time zone. My son lived in Detroit, it was dark, it was light, it's like 10 o'clock. It's a huge difference.
Hmm.
We should have it in the Dartmouth orientation.
And it's dark here.
Yeah.
It's dark.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that go into that 1 week when they come in as new students.
Pretty remarkable though, that it said that.
Right.
It's a pretty interesting transition.
Oh,
I found like, oh my God, it's so late, and then you find out it's like 8 o'clock.
Oh, no. 7:30.
Because you're like,
7:30.
and then the same thing happens when it stays really bright, you're like, you think it's, until you've
I would
gone through the season,
stuff
you
it
just
further
think
north,
it's
so.
not late, and you're like, holy smokes, it's.
Well, I mean, who knows, maybe we'll get rid of time zones too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Go the way.
it's on the docket anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Daylight savings, right, that was one of the.
Time zones, get rid of them. Just have one time for the entire.
Okay.
Make me regain control. Eric.
Yes, unless there's a motion to change time zones, let's move on to approval of items 1
It's getting late.
by consent. These are appointments to the Sustainable Hanover Committee and Deputy Town Clerk. Banner requests and administrative abatement, 55 Moose Mountain. Would anyone like to take any of those items out of the consent agenda? No. All right. Is there a motion for the consent agenda?
I think the Gail is a great addition to Sustainable Hanover, brings
Oh, yeah.
a ton of insight and energy.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
I mean, she has that intrinsically.
Yes. And Tracy will make a great deputy. Clerk.
I moved the consent agenda.
Okay, second. Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Committee reports. Yeah.
Real briefly, we had a downtown meeting, the morning of the snowstorm and didn't get great attendance. I handed out some draft downtown maps. You will see.
Very nice.
Lorem ipsum, so there's a lot of stuff that's missing on here, but it's coming along.
Yeah.
Some progress. Appreciate the people who helped with this at Milling Copy and the Record Poster Store. And that's about all.
That's great. Good work. Joanna.
I was just trying to see if I had any meetings. I don't think I did. I mean, no. Nothing to report.
Okay. I have nothing to report. Office.
Nothing to report on Conservation Commission on Wednesday. This coming Wednesday.
Jenny?
5 o'clock earlier.
Make that, but okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I can,
Okay.
that was just.
Yeah, it's really early. Okay, so. There's also transportation, the Regional Planning Commission annual meeting at 5 o'clock. I was hoping you could make it, but I will.
No, I won't be there. I
We'll
won't be
see.
there,
I'll
but I'll be a
miss
little
you.
late. I'll be there, but I'll be there.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Okay, well, yes, we'll
I'll be
figure it
there.
out.
I won't make it.
Okay, well, we all heard the letter from the Hanover Bike Walk, and I don't wanna take a lot of time with this, but it's sort of, the raised intersection is sort of more than a great flow into the Snowhead Design Plaza, which it also would be. It's got these, interesting things, but to keep this short, I'll just read this. I wanted to pass out, this information, you each get one. And the idea is just that since this was discussed by the select board and planning board back in the 20s and 21, there's just been so many successful implementations now. And we've learned a lot more, and we've learned that basically without it, a person's close to twice as likely to get hit. And while pedestrian crashes are a very tiny percentage of crashes, only like 2%, they're close to 20% of the fatalities. So I just wanted to pass out these infographics so everybody has the information and you know why that people are installing these and where they're doing it and what the design guidance is and why Hanover's use case is this like very quintessential case. And if you're interested in following any of the links, I'll go ahead and send you the PDFs. And when you think about this, I ask that you think about the safe systems approach that I really believe in, that safety is proactive and redundancy is crucial. You have those. Other stuff in Hanover Bike Walk, Hugh is doing a site meeting with Dodd Stacy, which is kind of exciting because he wants to help build a walking path around Etna Village. He owns 2 parcels that will help connect people a bit of the way if that if it can move forward. So we're very thankful for Hugh because he knows all about trails and site visits and all the complications that come with that. And the rest, we mostly just rearranged everything to talk about this because it was pressing. We mentioned the ice skating on the green, and I just wanted to make sure everybody in the universe out in the world knows there's also fantastic skating at Ockham Pond. So it's open. It has been very uncrowded. So I think people might not know that it has reopened. And the people have reported that it's just fantastic. So that's up. Similarly, you guys might have seen the cross country skiing Oak Hill is open for business, and they're encouraging people to go to their outdoor center and get passes and ski away. You guys heard from the CIPC planning board. We mentioned there's like a sign ordinance coming forward. Sorry, sign zoning change that the planning board's considering that Nancy brought up. And then there's some other zoning amendments. some of the board was really like still hoping for like a reduction in number of zoning categories. But that's going to, the full redesign is waiting, but there will be some proposals coming forward. And the staff has been diligently working on that to allow for incremental infill housing. Sustainability, they're planning a big Earth Day celebration. They're teaming with Parks and Rec. They're also kind of teaming up with Lebanon to do these open houses. So people can see, and they're teaming with Dartmouth students through the sustainability office. Hoping to get a speaker. The theme is like optimism and hope and what you can do, and it's sort of building off this book called What If We Got It Right? So that's exciting, and Pete had mentioned how Hypertherm is doing all this great metals collection. There is going to be a list that Sherry Boschert from Lebanon is putting together of all of the Upper Valley events going on during Earth Week. And one of them is going to be a Hypertherm tour. So watch
It's
out for
really
that
cool.
one, and you can learn
Yeah.
about all of their different initiatives. Yeah, everybody's like super excited about that. And hopefully the speakers and other things are going on. And then
What's the date on? Not the.
the Earth Week is April 21st to the 26th. Earth Day is the 22nd. Sustainable Hanover is planning on having a fair right now. Looks like on Saturday, the 26th, with lots of booths to learn about different things just individuals can do. And there will also be these open houses where, if you've been solar curious or EV curious, or just want to know what an induction stove looks like, you can go and like see how people are living sustainably. And the Conservation Commission, I mentioned they're talking about the Mink Brook Community Forest, so that should be exciting.
Yes.
Among other things.
Can I just make one comment in terms of the raised stuff and because Athos and I were on the board and as was Nancy in July of 2021. And I was part of this study committee in terms of what do we do around the green. We looked at like, instead of having it one way, having two directions, we did all this kind of stuff. And what came, we all thought, and we kind of said, yeah, let's, Carolyn Radish, who is our consultant at the time, she was working for GPI, she now works for Tool Design, recommended raised crossings. That was also, there were a number of recommendations, putting in bulb outs, so the distance that people are crossing is less, mid pedestrian refuge between the two directional traffic. Talked about getting rid of the left turn lane or just going to one lane. And as I remember, as a board, we said, all of this looks great. And I think I was like, yeah, we talked to Pete and Rob and they support raised crossings. Get it out to the public and let's get feedback from the public. It wasn't like we have to do all of this because we also talked about getting rid of the third lane on North Main Street. There were a lot of things that we talked about. So, when you say that the select board endorsed it, I think we said, hey, do whatever you can to make it safe. Raised beds raised, whatever, tables are great. And, I was like waving the flag, but it was further study required or further public input. We asked for that is my recollection, Athos. I don't think we took a vote.
No, we didn't.
I think we just supported it. And I think that, I still support it in the right locations, but I just want to be clear that I don't recall voting that we shall have tables at all crossings. So.
The other thing that happened was Peter Kabaki, put in a word that raised tables are very difficult for his plowing team to maintain.
But he did, I mean, he did support it, is my recollection. Yeah. So,
I think one of the things that people are very excited about is the raised crossing on College Street. That they're finding very easy to use. I had a student come up to me and say, you know, he saw a BMW racing all around the green, but not on College Street at night. And you really, I encourage you to go and just watch it. It was interesting. I was speaking to an adult about that. There's not a raised intersection. There's not a raised crossing on College. I drive that every day. I was like, well, then you probably drive a nice speed or a very large vehicle or both. Right? You probably drive a comfortable speed because when you see somebody accelerating towards it, they then decelerate. And it's that self-enforcing mechanism in addition to the visibility that people are very excited about. And then also just like the lack of encumbrances. There's a number of places that have a lot of water and ice that are very difficult to navigate at this particular moment, right? This is the time that they would be the worst. And it's interesting, I think the clearance there has been really good. Part of the guidance that has changed is that you use a sinusoidal curve that allows the plow to not get damaged. So it's about the shape. So, you know, the federal government puts out this guidance with these different curve shapes and they're like, if you have snow, use this one, you know, you got to clear snow. So that is all within the last decade. And that I think is part of the reason we're seeing a dramatic uptick in their use and yeah.
Okay, anything further, Jenny? And the committee reports?
No.
No, okay, all right. Rob, Ellen, anything further from either of you? No? Do we have need of a non-public?
We could do a very brief one if you like.
Very brief one?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. All right, so then we'll need a motion to move into.
I move that we move to non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91:3:91:1:3, Roman numeral 2, A, B, D.
Second?
A second.
Okay, Jenny seconds. All right, roll call.
Jared, aye.
Whitcomb, yes.
Callahan, aye.
Rasmussen.
Chamberlain, yes.
We are in non-public.